Chapter 724. Although the mysterious team that existed in the depths of the magical Beast Mountain range outside of Wake City was no longer a secret, after so much time had passed, no one was able to find out the identity of this mysterious team. During this period of time, there were a few powerful families and mercenary groups that tried to recruit this mysterious team, but without exception, all of them ended in failure. This mysterious team seemed to not be tempted by anything. No matter how generous their offers were, no matter how tempting their offers were, no one in this mysterious team could be moved. It was as if they were completely unmoved by money and power. The sky was filled with dark clouds, and a series of muffled sounds of thunder exploded from the sky, reverberating throughout the world. It was still noon, but the world was dark. Not long after, large droplets of rain began to fall from the sky. The originally bustling Wake City suddenly became desolate. Not a single person could be seen on the streets. Only the large droplets of rain could be seen washing away the dirt from the mercenaries' footsteps. Right at this moment, a crack suddenly appeared in the thick clouds above Wake City. A blue light flashed through the crack, and a figure quietly appeared under the thick clouds. Lightning flashed, and thunder roared in the sky. Bolts of lightning emitted a dazzling light as they surged through the sky, forming a spider web under the dark clouds. The figure was wearing a light blue robe. When the surrounding rainwater came close to his body, it was dispersed by an invisible force. It was impossible for the rainwater to touch this person. He stood under the lightning and looked down at the earth, ignoring the deafening thunder and lightning around him. He was like a god. This person was Jianshan from the kingdom of Jessen. Jianshan floated in the sky, his divine sense covering the entire Wake City. After a moment, his tightly shut eyes slowly opened. Looking at the distant magical Beast Mountain range, he muttered, "He's not in the city. It seems that he's still in a magical Beast Mountain range." As soon as he finished speaking, Jianshan's body turned into a blur and disappeared into the sky. He was already flying towards the magical Beast Mountain range, 20 miles away at a speed that was hard to follow with the naked eye. Deep within the mountain range of magical beasts, beneath a towering ancient tree, more than 10 large tents had been set up here. Outside the tents, several bare-chested, muscular men were standing guard in the rain. Their fierce gazes were filled with a fierce light. Clearly, they were not simple characters. At this moment, in the centermost tent, there were 9 people sitting around a large round table, eating cooked magical beast meat as they chatted. "Dr. and Yin Zheng, thank you for taking care of us in the past few days. It was because of you that we were able to escape from the jaws of the magical beast so many times." An old man held a cup of wine in his hand as he sincerely said this to a burly man and a frail middle-aged man sitting across from him. "Haha, Kyle, you don't need to thank me. Captain Jianshan and I were sent out to protect you in secret. Captain Jianshan's request was that we must protect each and every one of you. Originally, Yin Zheng and I were planning to hide in the dark, but who would have thought that after you broke through to the Earth Saint Master level, you would discover us?" Dr. N laughed heartily. Dr. N is correct. Protecting you is only our duty. However, you've all broken through to the Earth Saint Master level and have grasped a wondrous cultivation method that can instantly increase your battle prowess by several times. Other than that, all of you have grasped human tier battle skills. Your combined strength is not much weaker than the 2 of us. If we continue to stay here, we won't be of much use. Yin Zheng smiled. These people were the core members of the Flame Mercenaries that Jianshan had thrown here to train. Every single one of them had been loyal to him and had gone through life and death situations. They were trustworthy, and they were the first group of elites that Jianshan truly trusted. At the same time, he spared no expense in raising them. When Jianshan had left, he had left behind a large number of monster cores and various battle skills. After this period of training and growth, the strength of every single core member had undergone an overwhelming change. 7 of them had even broken through to Great Saint Master, becoming Earth Saint Masters. The other several dozen members had all reached Great Saint Master as well. None of them were below Great Saint Master. Hearing Yun Zheng's words, everyone in the tent fell into deep thought. Charles said, "Brother Yun Zheng is right. This mountain range of magical beasts is too small. The strongest magical beasts here are only Class 5 magical beasts. And after killing a few Class 5 magical beasts, there aren't many Class 5 magical beasts left. With our current strength, there's no point in continuing to stay here. Our brothers have already grasped human tier battle skills. Coupled with the heaven's fortune that the captain gave us, we can easily kill magical beasts that are stronger than us. The magical beasts here are indeed no threat to us. It's just a pity that the captain isn't here. Without the captain's orders, we can't leave without permission," Qing Feng said softly. After this period of intense battles with the magical beasts, Qing Feng had improved the fastest out of everyone. Not only was he the first person to reach Earth Saint Master, but he had also reached the second cycle a few days ago. He had become the strongest person aside from Yun Zheng and Seniorin. Although they were not geniuses, their bodies had been modified by Jinshin's 1,000-year-old hunter herb brew, so their cultivation speed was much faster than normal people. Coupled with the hard work they had put in during this period of time, all of them had improved by leaps and bounds. It would be great if the captain was here. Ever since we entered the depths of the magical Beast Mountains, we haven't left, so we don't know much about the outside world, Mo Tian sighed. Mo Tian let out a sigh as a handsome face that was filled with masculine aura involuntarily appeared in his mind. At this moment, a tremendous presence suddenly appeared from outside. The presence was gentle and would not harm anyone, but it gave people a feeling of vastness. It was as if the presence represented the world. Even Earth's Saint Masters would feel as insignificant as ants before the presence. What a tremendous presence! The expressions of the few people in the large tent suddenly became solemn. They immediately threw down the wine cups in their hands and hurriedly walked out of the large tent. It was still pouring outside, and the sky was gloomy. Yun Zheng, Seniorin, and the people who had just broken through to Earth's Saint Master walked out of the tent together, allowing the rain to wash over them. At the same time, people walked out of the surrounding tents one after another, quickly arriving behind Yun Zheng and the others. They all sternly looked around, searching for the source of the presence. In just a few seconds, all the core members of the Flame Mercenaries who had entered the magical Beast Mountains for training had gathered. At this moment, a faint blue streak of light shot through the sky. It flew over from afar with lightning-like speed, and it just happened to be heading toward where the Flame Mercenaries were. Be careful, everyone. It's a Heaven's Saint Master. All the members of the Flame Mercenaries were on high alert. A thumb-sized piece of jade had appeared in Seniorin's hand. The blue figure finally stopped in front of the raging Flame Mercenaries. Had that person's true appearance been revealed? When the members of the Flame Mercenaries saw who it was, they became slightly stunned. Their cautiousness vanished at that moment, and they were all overjoyed. "Captain! It's the captain! The captain's back!" All the members of the Flame Mercenaries excitedly called out. Jinshin's arrival had clearly made them very happy. Afterward, all of them knelt down on one knee to welcome Jinshin. Jinshin's blue robes fluttered in the wind. He stood in the pouring rain, but there was not a single drop of water on him. He slowly glanced over the several dozen men below and finally faintly smiled. He said, "Not bad, not bad. Looks like you've all improved a lot recently." Jinshin slowly landed on the ground. With a thought, an invisible force immediately filled the surroundings, lifting all the people up. Jinshin was politely invited into the tent by a few Earth Saint Masters. Afterward, they gave a simple report of what they had gone through in the past few years to Jinshin. "Yep, not bad. 7 of you have actually broken through to Earth Saint Master, which has indeed exceeded my expectations. Remaining here won't be of much help with your current strength." Jinshin took out a wooden box and a stack of books from his space ring. He said, "This box contains Class 6 Radiant Spirit Pills, and these are some Earth Tier battle skills. Take them and distribute the Class 6 Radiant Spirit Pills evenly to each of you as a life-saving item. As for these Earth Tier battle skills, you can learn them as long as you've reached Earth Saint Master. Prepare to leave tomorrow and go to the Tian Yuan continent to train." Yes, Captain. The 7 Earth Saint Masters of the Flame mercenaries replied in unison. Unconcealable joy filled their eyes. Remember, when you go to the Tian Yuan continent to train, don't use the name of the Flame Mercenaries. Create another mercenary group. Jianshan warned them again before looking away. Yin Zheng, Senior, and the two of you have done extremely well. The mission has been completed perfectly. Take my keepsake and report to the headquarters of the Flame Mercenaries. As for the headquarters, Jianshan passed a jade pendant to the two of them. The jade pendant was a keepsake from Chanyang Prefecture. It was a symbol of status in Chanyang Prefecture, but Jianshan no longer needed it. Captain, where is the headquarters of the Flame Mercenaries? Senior asked. Before the Flame Mercenaries had expanded, he and Yunzheng had already entered the depths of the magical Beast Mountains. They had always been secretly protecting Jianshan's trusted subordinates and had never ventured out. Jianshan smiled mysteriously. The two of you can go out and ask around. You'll find out where the headquarters is. Jianshan stayed there for a day. He used this time to explain some cultivation knowledge and his experience in breaking through to Earth Saint Master to everyone. At the same time, he left behind a large number of Class 4 and Class 5 monster cores for everyone to use. He left early the next morning and began his journey to the Holy Emperor's Empire. The Holy Emperor's Empire was one of the most powerful empires on the Tian Yuan continent. There were a total of 7 capital cities on the continent, and the Holy Emperor's Empire occupied 3 of them. It was completely more powerful than the other 2 empires. Chapter 725. The fiery red sun hung high in the sky, emitting intense rays of light. The terrifyingly high temperature sprinkled down, scorching the earth below. In the boundless desert, a faint figure streaked across the sky with lightning-like speed, disappearing into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Jianshan flew in the air as he looked at the golden desert below him. He murmured, "According to the distance marked on the map, I'll be able to cross this desert in 2 hours. After that, I'll be able to reach the Holy Emperor's Empire in 2 days." The Holy Emperor's Empire was extremely far away from both the Qin Empire and the Kingdom of Jesson. With Jianshan's current speed, it would take him more than 10 days to travel from the Kingdom of Jesson to the Holy Emperor's Empire. Although Jianshan could use the space gate of the Qin Empire to reach the Holy Emperor's Empire several million kilometers away, he did not do so. This was because he had already gained some understanding of the Holy Emperor's Empire from Bai Hai and the 4 Imperial Protector of the Qin Empire, including the matter of how a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master could reach the Class 7 Radiant Saint Master. If a Radiant Saint Master wanted to reach the Class 7 Radiant Saint Master, they would need the assistance of the Holy Emperor's Saint Artifact. However, the Saint Artifact could not be activated at any time. It would only be activated for a fixed amount of time each time. There was still a year and a half until the next activation. As a result, Jianshan had plenty of time. As a result, he chose to travel to the Holy Emperor's Empire in this manner. As he traveled, he admired the scenery around him. He was like Xiaoyao. Jianshan flew past countless mountains, rivers, and bustling cities before finally entering the Holy Emperor's Empire. As one of the 3 most powerful empires on the continent, the Holy Emperor's Empire was extremely vast. It was over 100 times the size of the Kingdom of Jesson. Its population had reached an astonishing number as well, numbering in the tens of billions. Compared to the hundreds of millions of people in the Kingdom of Jesson, it was like an elephant compared to an ant. The Holy Emperor's Empire had 3 capital cities. The 3 capital cities were controlled by 3 great clans. Each clan controlled a city. The Imperial City was one of the 3 capital cities in the center of the empire, the City of God. The Holy Emperor's Empire's Imperial City. Near the border of the Holy Empire, there was a bustling first-class city. At this moment, outside this first-class city, there was a young man in a light blue robe riding a Class 4 magical beast, heading towards the city at a steady pace. The young man was Jianshan. After entering the Holy Emperor's Empire, he was in no hurry to travel. Instead, he planned to enter the city and learn more about the locals first. After all, the Holy Emperor's empire was just too unfamiliar to Jinshin. He needed more detailed information. Jinshin slowly entered the city on his class 4 magical beast. After circling around the wide streets, he arrived before a rather large restaurant. He tied up his mount before striding in. "Sir, welcome to our Kulai Xiang restaurant. Our Kulai Xiang restaurant has the best chef in the entire city, as well as the most beautiful waitresses in the entire city. We can guarantee that you'll be satisfied. Please come in." A waiter immediately welcomed Jinshin and invited him in with a smile. Jinshin entered the restaurant and glanced around. He planned on finding a quieter spot, but soon after, his eyes locked onto an old man sitting in a corner. His eyes immediately widened as disbelief flooded his face. The old man wore a gray robe. His white hair was tied up with a rope and fell behind his back. He was sitting alone in front of a table filled with food, drinking, and eating leisurely. The old man looked very ordinary and did not attract any attention. However, Jinshin, who had just entered the restaurant, was greatly shocked. Jinshin stared at the old man in shock. At this moment, he simply doubted whether his eyes were playing tricks on him. He immediately rubbed his eyes with both hands. When he looked again, his eyes were filled with uncertainty. At this moment, the old man suddenly turned his head and stared at Jinshin. His expression was calm, and his gaze was deep. He said in a flat tone, "Jinshin, come and sit." The soft Jinshin made Jinshin tremble all over when he heard it. He softly cried out, "Uncle Shio, it really is you." Jinshin's heart churned. He had never thought that he would actually encounter Uncle Shio from Longevity Valley in the Holy Emperor's empire. Uncle Shio did not say anything. He sat there by himself, drinking and eating. He no longer paid any attention to Jinshin. Jinshin sucked in a deep breath and forcefully suppressed his shock and excitement. He arrived before Uncle Shio and sat down. Afterwards, he immediately asked in doubt, "Uncle Shio, why have you appeared here?" Uncle Shio looked at Jinshin and said, "This time, I've specially come for you." "For me?" A sliver of doubt appeared in Jinshin's eyes. "Jinshin, I know that you've come to the Holy Emperor's empire this time to break through the 6th class and become a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master," Uncle Shio said indifferently. However, the indifferent tone made Jinshin's face change drastically. He stared at Uncle Shio in shock as his heart churned. His identity as a Radiant Saint Master had always been Jinshin's greatest secret. There were not a lot of people who knew about his identity in this world, but Jinshin found it hard to believe when Uncle Shio had found out about it. A transparent barrier had appeared around the table where Jinshin and Uncle Shio sat. Uncle Shio's indifferent voice rang out once again. "Jinshin, I cultivate darkness-attributed saint force, so I'm extremely sensitive to radiant saint force. I've been secretly paying attention to you recently, so I know about your identity as a radiant saint master. I think I'm not the only one who knows about it. The Grand Elder of Mercenary City probably knows about it as well." Jinshin's thoughts raced. He said, "Uncle Shio, are you the sect master of the Bloodsword sect, Houston? Were you secretly controlling the 4 saint rulers of the Bloodsword sect to help my Chongyang prefecture survive the danger?" Uncle Shio nodded, which was equivalent to admitting to this matter. He stopped talking about it with Jinshin and changed the topic. "Jinshin, what identity do you plan on using to break through to the 6th class?" Jinshin had thought of this question long ago, so he answered without any hesitation. It said that the opportunity to break through to the 6th class is extremely rare. The Holy Emperor's empire will never give outsiders this opportunity, so I plan on using my identity as the Imperial Protector of the Qin Empire to obtain this right. Chapter 726. Jinshin was slightly surprised. He asked in a heavy voice, "Uncle Shio, is there some sort of secret behind this?" Uncle Shio nodded. "Correct. It's just as you think. There are indeed secrets that very few people know about." Uncle Shio slowly drank all the alcohol in his cup and said, "If you want a chance to become a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master, you need to become a core member of a Radiant Saint Master or be a member of one of the 3 great clans of the Holy Emperor's empire. Otherwise, it's impossible for outsiders to obtain such an opportunity. At the same time, the Radiant Saint Master Union and the three great clans will not let go of any powerful Radiant Saint Masters. They will force them to join their side through threats and promises. As a result, basically all Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters in the Holy Emperor's Empire and even on the Tian Yuan continent belong to the Radiant Saint Master Union and the three great clans. Only an extremely small number of people with great backgrounds can obtain their freedom. However, if you want to obtain this freedom, you need to have the support of a clan as powerful as an ancient clan. Uncle Shio looked at Jianshan and said, Jianshan, although you are one of the imperial protector of the Qin Empire, that identity is not enough to protect you, because the Qin Empire is only a vassal state of one of the three great clans of the Holy Emperor's Empire. As a result, once your true identity is exposed, your actions in the future will be greatly restricted. Moreover, since ancient times, Radiant Saint Masters and fighters cannot exist at the same time. Not only are you a Saint Ruler, but you also possess the abilities of a Radiant Saint Master. Such a strange thing has never happened on the Tian Yuan continent, even in ancient times. As a result, if the Radiant Saint Master Union learns that you are both a Radiant Saint Master and fighter, it will definitely affect you to a certain extent. As a result, I don't know what kind of consequences you will face. Before your strength reaches the level where you can fend off the Holy Emperor's Empire, it's best if you don't reveal this secret so easily. Jianshan fell silent. Uncle Shio's words had completely messed up his plans. As a result, not only could his identity as the imperial protector of the Qin Empire not be exposed, he had to hide it as much as he could. Otherwise, once people learned that he was both a fighter and a Radiant Saint Master, it would definitely lead to some trouble for him. Jianshan had already anticipated the consequences of his identity as a Radiant Saint Master. However, he was confident that with his current strength as a Saint Ruler and his identity as the imperial protector of the Qin Empire, even if there were some small problems, they would not cause him any trouble. However, he had never thought that the situation would be even more severe than he had imagined. It had completely exceeded his expectations. Uncle Shio continued, aside from that, the Radiant Saint Master Union has a great secret. This secret is related to all Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters. The main reason why I've come to find you is because of this secret. With that, Jianshan suppressed his worries. He stared at Uncle Shio closely, waiting for him to continue. Uncle Shio became rather stern for once. He said, Jianshan, if you hadn't broken through to the 6th class, you would have been restricted by the Union, but it wouldn't have affected you much. The truly fatal thing would be that if you had broken through to the 7th class, your movements would have been completely restricted by the Union. After that, you would have joined a secret research project. Not only would you have lost all of your freedom, but even your life would be in danger. Jianshan's heart violently jumped. He had never thought that the Union would actually have such a dark side to it. Uncle Shio, what is this secret research project of the Union? Jianshan could not help but ask out of curiosity. Uncle Shio said with a heavy voice, it's the secret to breaking through to the 8th class. Jianshan was mildly surprised. He asked, Uncle Shio, are there no Class 8 Radiant Saint Masters on the Tian Yuan continent? Class 8 Radiant Saint Masters. How can such a heaven-defying existence appear so easily? Uncle Shio slowly raised his head to look at the ceiling of the restaurant. His gaze seemed to be able to pierce through the various obstructions and reach the distant stars. He slowly said, Class 8, Radiant Saint Masters have not appeared for countless years already. According to my understanding from some ancient records, Class 8 Radiant Saint Masters have only appeared once in ancient times, and it was only once. After that, no more Class 8 Radiant Saint Masters have appeared on the Tian Yuan continent, because Class 8 Radiant Saint Masters are just too heaven-defying. Heaven-defying? Uncle Shio, do Class 8 Radiant Saint Masters possess some kind of great ability? Jianshan's curiosity was piqued. He was a Radiant Saint Master himself, so he was obviously very curious about the abilities that Radiant Saint Masters could use in the future. Class 8 Radiant Saint Masters do indeed possess heaven-defying abilities. This ability is even terrifying because they can awaken the sliver of soul left behind in ruler armaments, reviving saint rulers who only left behind their ruler armaments when their time was up. Jianchun violently trembled. He stared at Uncle Xiao in disbelief as his heart churned. Uncle Xiao, is this true? Can ruler armaments really be revived and allow their owners to obtain the power of regeneration? Jianchun asked with a trembling voice. I don't know whether it's true or not. I've only read about it in ancient records. However, this is no longer a secret to the large clans on the Tianyuan continent. Basically, every single ancient clan knows about it. Even a few hermit clans know about it, said Uncle Xiao. Jianchun's heart began to thump uncontrollably. He had learned about this from Dugu Feng and Huang Luan when he participated in the tournament in Mercenary City. However, he believed it to be a rumor back then, so he did not take it to heart. Now that he had heard the same thing from Uncle Xiao, he could not help but believe it. Even though it all seemed so absurd, Jianchun found it hard to believe. It also filled Jianchun with yearning. He yearned to become a Class 8 Radiant Saint Master. Class 8 Radiant Saint Masters are actually so heaven-defying. I wonder if I'll be able to reach that level of cultivation in my lifetime, Jianchun thought. At this moment, Uncle Xiao continued, the Radiant Saint Master Union has been conducting this research for many years now. Basically, every single Class 7 Radiant Saint Master has been involved in this research, but none of them have succeeded. Instead, many Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters have died because of it. As a result, Jianchun, once you break through to Class 7, you must leave the Union. You must not participate in this research because very few of the Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters who have participated in this research have survived. Uncle Xiao, did none of the Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters resist? Jianchun asked. You don't know just how crazy the Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters are to reach Class 8. For this, they're willing to give up their lives. Although there are a few people who are unwilling to participate in this research, once they join the Radiant Saint Master Union, their lives will no longer be up to them. Even if they try to escape, they'll be captured by the experts of the three clans in the end, Houston said. Jianchun's heart became heavy. The information he had heard from Uncle Xiao had completely overturned his understanding of the Radiant Saint Master Union. Suddenly, Jianchun's heart skipped a beat. He asked, Uncle Xiao, may I ask if the white tiger will be recognized by others if it follows me? Uncle Xiao glanced at the white tiger that was sleeping soundly on Jianchun's shoulder and said, on the Tianyuan continent, there are definitely less than 10 people who can recognize the winged tiger, and there's no such person in the 3 great empires. Jianchun, you don't have to worry about that. However, you must remember that you can't expose the winged tiger to Class 7 magical beasts because they can sense the pressure from the bloodline of a divine beast within the winged tiger. Jianchun felt like a rock had been lifted from his heart when he heard that. He completely stopped worrying. Jianchun, I've said everything I need to say. I believe you will make a wise choice. Go. After saying that, Uncle Xiao's body silently disappeared. At the same time, the transparent barrier covering the table also disappeared. Without the protection of the barrier, Jianchun immediately heard the clamor in the restaurant. However, none of those people noticed that an old man had silently vanished from the table where Jianchun sat. Even when Jianchun sat down with Uncle Xiao, no one noticed. It was as if they were just air. Jianchun slowly stood up. Uncle Xiao's words had completely disrupted Jianchun's original plans. Now, he had no choice but to come up with a new plan to obtain the opportunity to break through to the 7th class. Jianchun lost interest in eating. He stood up from his chair and turned around to leave. He left on his Class 4 magical beast. After Jianchun left, a waiter passed by the table where Jianchun and Uncle Xiao were sitting. Seeing the table filled with delicacies, the waiter could not help but become slightly confused. He thought hard for a while before his face suddenly changed. He cried out, I remember now. Where's that old man? Where did that old man go? That bastard, he still hasn't paid. The waiter immediately chased after them. Looking at the crowd on the street outside, he could not help but sigh at the sky. He thought, I'm done for. This month's wages are definitely gone. Jianchun found an inn in the 1st-class city to settle down. He began to plan his future actions. 3 days later, Jianshun left the city. He flew towards the city of God, one of the 3 capital cities of the Holy Emperor's empire. This was because the Radiant Saint Master Union was located in the city of God. 2 days later, on the official road outside the city of God, a luxurious carriage galloped quickly on the wide official road, kicking up large amounts of dust. Around the carriage, there were about 50 burly mercenaries escorting it. Esteemed Radiant Saint Master, we are only 30 kilometers away from the city of God. At this moment, the driver suddenly turned around and said to the person inside the carriage. The tightly shut door of the carriage was suddenly opened, revealing a young man in his 20s. He wore a white, luxurious robe and had a very handsome face. His pair of ordinary eyes exuded a unique attraction, as if they were as deep as the vast starry sky. The young man stared at the tall city walls in front of him as a strange light appeared in his eyes. Chapter 7:27. The young man was Jianshun. Uncle Xiu's arrival had completely changed Jianshun's original plans. Now, he had already given up on his identity as a fighter. He planned on going to the Holy Emperor's Empire with another identity before joining the Radiant Saint Master Union and becoming a core member. Fortunately, there had never been in existence who was both a fighter and a Radiant Saint Master on the Tianyuan continent. This gave Jianshun an additional layer of protection. Jianshun did not care about the white tiger on his head at all. He also stared at the city in front of him with great curiosity. He murmured, "Are those the 7 capital cities of the Tianyuan continent? They really are extremely large. I can actually sense a primordial presence from the walls that seem like dragons crawling on the ground. It's so vast that it actually makes me feel pressured." Hee, esteemed Radiant Saint Master, this must be your first time in the city of God, right? Your understanding of the city is not as clear as ours. It's said that the 7 capital cities of the Tianyuan continent were forcefully uprooted from the ground by several experts who had reached the level of the Holy Emperor. Not only are the cities extremely tough, but they are also protected by a powerful, mysterious power. The defenses of the cities are far greater than anyone can imagine. It's said that no one on the Tianyuan continent has been able to get through the defenses of the 7 capital cities. If the barriers are activated, even the 9th heavenly layer experts of the Holy Emperor won't be able to get through, a mercenary said as he rode on the side of the carriage. He was a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance. He was honest and sincere, and he was also the captain of the small mercenary group. Although he was only an Earth Saint Master, he was still a native of the Holy Emperor's empire, so he knew the city of God extremely well. "Captain Hu Yun, are you saying that the 7 capital cities of the Tianyuan continent were uprooted from the ground by those supreme experts in ancient times?" Jianshun's eyes sparkled as he stared at the middle-aged man who spoke. There was also a trace of disbelief in his eyes. Commander Hu Yun chuckled. "Yeah, this rumor is no secret in our Holy Emperor's empire. It said that the 7 capital cities of the Tianyuan continent were all uprooted from the ground by several Holy Emperor experts working together. Perhaps it should be said that they grew from the ground. Although countless years have passed since then, the 7 capital cities still possess great power. The reinforced walls are impossible to break through." Jianshun took a deep breath. He looked at the tall city wall that was approaching from afar. He found it hard to imagine how powerful and terrifying it would be to pull such a huge city out of the ground. The rest of the journey was silent. Jianshun sat in the luxurious carriage as he slowly made his way to the city of God under the protection of a group of mercenaries. The walls of the city of God were 100 meters tall. They were completely snow-white and as smooth as a mirror. There were no cracks at all. The entire wall seemed to be a single piece, as if it had been created by the world itself. The snow-white wall actually reflected a hazy white light under the sunlight. It was filled with holiness. The 16 tall city gates were filled with hubbub of voices. There was an endless stream of mercenaries and merchants going in and out of the city. Every city gate was filled with soldiers wearing silver white armor. Their cold gazes swept past the people who were constantly going in and out of the city. However, Every team that entered the city of God had to pay a shiny gold coin as the entrance fee. This was one of the sources of income for the three great families of the Holy Empire. When Jianshun passed by the gates of the city of God, he could not help but become stern. This was because he could clearly sense an extremely pure and tremendous energy hidden within the walls of the city. For the first time, Jianshan felt so insignificant before this energy, like he was a small boat floating in the ocean. At the same time, a tremendous pressure enveloped Jianshan's entire soul, making him feel like he was facing an undefeatable enemy. He did not even dare to think about resisting. Is this the energy of the Holy Emperor? Looks like the rumors are true. The 7 capital cities of the Tian-Yuan continent really were uprooted by the Holy Emperor in ancient times. Jianshan was secretly shocked. The carriage entered the city of God without any obstructions. It continued on for another 50 kilometers before Jianshan dismounted. He casually tossed a pouch filled with purple coins to Captain Huyun before turning around and leaving. Commander Huyun looked at the pouch in his hand that was filled to the brim with purple coins. He was immediately surprised and said, "Esteemed Radiant Saint Master, there's no need for this much. Your commission is too much. Captain Huyun, it's been hard on our brothers along the way. Just treat the rest as extra compensation." Jianshan's voice rang out from up ahead. Jianshan continued onward without even looking back, disappearing into the busy streets very quickly. The streets of the City of God were extremely wide, enough for over a dozen carriages to travel side by side. Jianshan looked around as he walked along the wide streets. He would raise his head to look at the sky from time to time. Ever since he had entered the City of God, he could clearly sense that the energy of the world here was several times denser than outside. The closer he was to the center of the city, the denser the energy of the world would be. Other than that, the Radiant Saint Force in the surroundings was several times denser as well. If he used Radiant Saint Force here, Jianshan believed that he would only need a single moment to push the density of his Radiant Saint Force to the limit. Other than that, there were many experts in the City of God as well. Almost half of the people or mercenaries on the streets were Earth Saint Masters. Even Heaven Saint Masters were rather common. Radiant Saint Masters, who were rarely seen in the outside world, could only be regarded as common here. They could be seen everywhere. As one of the 7 capital cities of the Tian-Yuan continent, the City of God was not only a place where Radiant Saint Masters gathered, it was also a place where experts gathered. However, there was one thing that caught Jianshan's attention. He saw quite a few Radiant Saint Masters on the streets, but all of them wore badges of various colors on their chests without exception. They were red, orange, yellow, green, and so on. The white tiger did not continue to sleep either. It stood on Jianshan's head with its head held high and its chest puffed out. It looked around curiously with its large, bright eyes, as if it was filled with curiosity about everything here. At this moment, the sound of hooves rang out in the distance. Over 10 people riding magical beasts approached Jianshan. The 2 people at the very front were a man and woman in their 20s. The man wore azure robes. He was tall and sturdy, with a stocky build. The woman wore white robes. She was pretty. Her skin was white, and she was rather pretty. Her beautiful eyes looked at the mercenaries on the 2 sides of the street with some disdain. A sliver of pride appeared between her brows. When the woman's gaze inadvertently glanced at Jianshan, she immediately made eye contact with the white tiger on Jianshan's shoulder. The white tiger's pure and intelligent gaze was immediately imprinted in the woman's mind. What a cute little beast! The woman subconsciously cried out. Her eyes shone as she stared at the white tiger. Her expression was filled with unconcealable love. The young man beside the woman followed the woman's gaze and discovered the existence of the little white tiger. He immediately turned his head and smiled at the woman. "Since little sister likes it, I'll buy it for you as a gift." With that, the young man controlled his magical beast to block Jianshan's path. He studied Jianshan and discovered that he was not a member of a large clan in the City of God. He immediately relaxed and said, "Brother, my sister has taken a liking to your little beast. Name a price, and I'll buy it." The young man smiled, but his voice was extremely cold. He spoke to Jianshun in a commanding tone. Jianshun frowned slightly. He did not even glance at the young man as he coldly replied, "I'm not selling." With that, he moved around the young man. The young man's eyes turned cold. He looked at Jianshun's slender figure and said, "From your appearance, you should be a Radiant Saint Master. May I ask why you don't wear a Radiant Saint Master's badge?" Badge? When Jianshun heard that, he was interested. He immediately thought of the badges on the chests of the Radiant Saint Masters he had encountered along the way. Looks like this badge is issued by the Radiant Saint Master Union. It should be a symbol of status for Radiant Saint Masters, Jianshun thought. The white-robed woman on a Class 4 magical beast arrived before Jianshun arrogantly. She studied Jianshun, but when she saw Jianshun's face, she immediately became stunned. However, a sliver of disdain appeared in her eyes soon after. She said, "You're quite handsome. Looking at your figure and appearance, you really do seem like a Radiant Saint Master. However, you don't wear a badge issued by the Radiant Saint Master Union. You must have just awakened your abilities as a Radiant Saint Master and haven't been verified by the Union yet. Whatever, even if you're only a Class 1 Radiant Saint Master, or perhaps not even a Class 1 Radiant Saint Master, it's all because I find you pleasing to the eye. Give the infant beast to me, and I'll make an exception and take in a male follower as a reward. As long as you follow me, I'll teach you radiant arts." Jianshun raised his head to look at the woman who sat on a magical beast and looked down at him. He saw that she actually wore a green badge on her chest as well. Jianshun did not know what the badges represented, but he knew that green badges were rather rare. At the very least, only 2 or 3 of the Radiant Saint Masters he had seen wore green badges. The others all wore red, orange, and yellow badges. "Sorry, I'm not selling this beast, nor will I offer it to anyone," Jianshun declined without any hesitation before walking away, without even looking back. Chapter 728. The young man's expression suddenly changed as well. His gaze immediately became sharp, and he coldly said, "Humph. A mere low-level Radiant Saint Master is actually so arrogant. You really want to do things the hard way. I'd like to see what ability you have to stop me from taking this cub away." The young man leapt up and directly flew off his mount towards Jianshun. His hand reached out towards the white tiger on Jianshun's head with lightning speed. A cold light flashed through Jianshun's eyes. The young man's actions had already completely infuriated Jianshun. However, Jianshun did not react at all. He was only a Radiant Saint Master right now. He definitely could not expose his abilities as a fighter in front of so many people. Otherwise, his disguise would be exposed. The white tiger's bright eyes stared at the young man who was trying to grab it. Its intelligent eyes revealed a sliver of disdain and ridicule. Just as the young man's hand arrived in front of the white tiger suddenly opened its small mouth and bit the young man's finger. The young man never thought that the cub that seemed to pose no threat at all would actually be so fast. Before he could even react, his finger had been bitten by the cub's mouth. Soon after, an intense pain suddenly appeared, causing the young man's expression to drastically change. Soon after, a miserable cry uncontrollably came from his mouth. "Ah!" The young man let out a miserable cry. His body actually retreated even faster than before. In the blink of an eye, he had retreated 10 meters away. His eyes were still filled with shock as he stared at the white tiger that seemed to pose no threat at all above Jianshun's head. Blood flowed from the young man's right hand. One of his fingers had already been bitten off by the white tiger. The pain of having his finger broken caused the young man's facial muscles to twist violently. This inconceivable scene in front of them was noticed by the surrounding people who were watching the show. Each and every one of them had a slightly shocked expression. Their gazes uniformly landed on the little white tiger. No one would have thought that this seemingly harmless cub would actually be able to bite off a person's finger in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a piece of flint. This was especially true when the person whose finger was bitten off still had the strength of a high-level Great Saint Master. What kind of magical beast is this? The young man forcefully suppressed the intense pain coming from his hand and exclaimed as he stared at the little white tiger in shock. His heart was in turmoil because he actually didn't notice at all how the cub had bitten off his finger. He only felt that when his finger was about to grab the cub, a heart-wrenching pain immediately came. I didn't expect this cute cub to be so aggressive. It's really beyond my expectations. The woman with the green insignia of a radiant Saint Master on her chest stared at the white tiger with shining eyes. She became even more determined to obtain the young beast. The young man who had his finger bitten off stared at the white tiger, and his eyes flickered a few times before landing on Jianshin. He said in a deep voice, "Sir, your cub actually bit off my finger. I, Lei Ming Rao, must obtain justice for this matter. Leave your cub behind and hand it over to our Lei clan. We can forgive you for your disrespect towards our Lei clan." Jianshin gently picked up the white tiger that was standing on his head and held it in his arms. He gently stroked Mao Songsong's little head and glanced at the young man with a sharp gaze. Then, without saying anything, he turned around and left. With Jianshin's current status, he really couldn't be bothered to waste his breath on this young man. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't use his strength as a fighter here, he would have taught this arrogant young man a lesson long ago. Seeing that his words had been ignored by a mere low-level Radiant Saint Master, Lei Mingrao flew into a rage out of humiliation. He waved his hand and yelled, "Stop him! If you don't give me an explanation for today's matter, don't even think about leaving. I can't just cut off a finger for nothing." The dozen burly men behind Lei Mingrao and the woman immediately controlled their mounts to surround Jianshin. Although Radiant Saint Masters possessed an extremely high status in the Holy Emperor's kingdom, the Lei clan was still quite powerful in the City of God. A mere Radiant Saint Master that had yet to be certified was nothing in the eyes of the Lei clan. "Capture him and bring him to the Lei clan for interrogation," Lei Mingrao ordered. "Yes, sir." The dozen or so burly men responded in unison and reached out to grab Jianshin. But at that moment, a deep voice rang out from outside the arena. "How dare your Lei clan disrespect a Radiant Saint Master in the City of God? Are you trying to challenge the dignity of the Radiant Saint Master Union?" This voice immediately made the men from the Lei clan hesitate. They all stared at the source of the voice with ugly expressions. Even Lei Mingrao's face suddenly changed. Deep fear filled his eyes. The Radiant Saint Master Union was an extremely large organization in the City of God. Even the three great clans that controlled the Holy Emperor's kingdom were inextricably linked. They were an existence that could not be provoked no matter what. A middle-aged man in white robes pushed the crowd aside and walked in with his head held high. Behind him were two other middle-aged men with cold faces. They both radiated with an icy presence. They were both Earth Saint Masters. Lei Mingrao stared at the middle-aged man coldly, but when he noticed the azure badge on the man's chest, his eyes suddenly narrowed. The woman on the magical beast also noticed the azure insignia on the man's chest. Her face immediately changed slightly, and she gently snorted. She murmured to herself in a voice that only she could hear, "Isn't he just a Class 5, Radiant Saint Master? If I have enough time, I'll definitely be able to reach that level of cultivation." The Class 5, Radiant Saint Master glanced around before looking at the men surrounding Jianshin. He coldly snorted and called out, "How dare you attack a Radiant Saint Master? Do you want to be punished by the Radiant Saint Master Union? Why don't you disperse?" The Class 5, Radiant Saint Master's call immediately deterred the burly men from the Lei family. They did not dare to make a sound, and immediately dispersed as quickly as possible, distancing themselves from Jianshin. Lei Mingrao stood to one side, not daring to say anything. His gaze towards the Class 5, Radiant Saint Master was filled with deep fear. Although Radiant Saint Masters were very weak, their status in the Holy Emperor's empire was much greater than his status as the third young master of the Lei family. Lei Mingrao clenched his fists tightly as he glared at Jianshin viciously. He would never give up on his revenge so easily. The Class 5, Radiant Saint Master arrived before Jianshin under the protection of the two Earth Saint Masters. He immediately smiled and said, "Looking at your attire, you should be a Radiant Saint Master as well. Why don't you go to the Radiant Saint Master Union for certification?" Jianshin clasped his hands towards the middle-aged man and said, "Thank you for helping me out. I was just about to go to the Union for the certification, but I didn't think something so troublesome would happen. The Class 5, Radiant Saint Master was clearly very amiable. Even though Jinshin was only a low-level Radiant Saint Master in his eyes, he did not look down on him because of that. He smiled faintly and said, "I'm called Bai Lin. If you don't mind, you can call me Uncle Bai Lin. Little brother, as long as you are a Radiant Saint Master, no matter how powerful you are, you will receive great treatment in the Holy Emperor's Empire. You will receive the protection of the Radiant Saint Master Union. So in the City of God, you don't need to fear those people who bully you. If they make things difficult for you, you can just mention the Radiant Saint Master Union." "Thank you, Uncle Bai Lin, for your guidance." Jianshun clasped his hands. "Little brother, this place is very close to a branch of the Radiant Saint Master Union. I just happen to have some free time right now, so why don't I accompany you to the Union for the certification?" Bai Lin smiled. Afterward, Jianshun left with the White Tiger and Bai Lin, leaving behind Lei Mimiao, who stood there with a sunken face as he stared at Jianshun's back. Now that Jianshun was walking with a Class 5, Radiant Saint Master, Lei Mimiao would not dare to stop them even if he had eaten the guts of a leopard. "Two people secretly follow that kid and report to me at all times." Lei Ming Ao instructed the group of guards behind him before he mounted his magical beast and left in a hurry. His severed finger had to be repaired as soon as possible. Otherwise, if it was delayed for too long, it would be troublesome to repair it. Fortunately, it was not too severe this time, so it would not be difficult to repair it. Jianshun and Bai Lin chatted along the way as they made their way to the closest branch of the Radiant Saint Master Union. Along the way, Bai Lin explained a few rules of the City of God and questions regarding Radiant Saint Masters to Jianshun, allowing Jianshun to gain a better understanding of the city. Chapter 729. Jianshun stood outside the entrance and studied the branch of the Radiant Saint Master Union. From Lin Bai, he had learned that not only did the Union provide all Radiant Saint Masters with the certification of their ranks, but it also provided free lodging and food for all Radiant Saint Masters. Without any exaggeration, the branch was like an inn in the eyes of the Radiant Saint Masters, and extremely safe and special, and that would not be disturbed by anyone. "Brother, you're probably unfamiliar with this place. Come with me. I'll take you to get your Radiant Saint Master certification." The Radiant Saint Master Union places great importance on every single Radiant Saint Master. Some of the more powerful Radiant Saint Masters will even receive the personal protection of experts from the Union when they venture out. Bai Lin smiled as he explained to Jianshun. He led Jianshun into the branch. Lin Bai glanced at the two cold men behind him and said to Jianshun in a rather complacent manner, "Brother, do you see the two brothers beside me? They're the experts sent by the Union to protect me. They've both reached the third cycle of Earth Saint Master." Jianshun glanced back at the two men with that, and a sliver of surprise flashed through his eyes. He had originally thought that the two of them had been sent by the Lin clan to protect him, but he had never thought that the two Earth Saint Masters would actually be sent by the Radiant Saint Master Union. This surprised him greatly. Lin Bai smiled in a rather complacent manner when he saw Jianshun's expression. He said, "This is the treatment of a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master. If you reach Class 5 in the future, you'll be able to enjoy this treatment as well." As he said that, Jianshun arrived before a counter under Lin Bai's lead. A white-robed, white-haired old man lay on an armchair behind the counter. His eyes were currently closed, clearly asleep. His snores were thunderous, and an azure badge hung from his chest. It was the same color as Lin Bai's badge. "Gabby, stop sleeping. Your job is here." Lin Bai knocked on the counter several times with his right hand, making muffled sounds. The old man immediately became furious when he was woken up. Before he even opened his eyes, he furiously roared, "Which blind brat dares to wake up my esteemed Class 5, Radiant Saint Master Jiao Michigan? Are you sick of staying in the City of God?" Just as his voice faded, the old man's sleepy eyes immediately landed on Lin Bai. His expression was slightly startled, and he immediately laughed awkwardly. Scratching his head, he said, "Lin Bai brat, so it's you? It's fine, it's fine. I was woken up from my beautiful dream. I'll have the same beautiful dream in a while." Lin Bai was clearly used to the old man's appearance. He extended his hand and pulled Jianshan before him. Jiami, this little brother is a Radiant Saint Master, but he hasn't been certified yet. You're the vice chairman of this branch, so you can certify him. Jiami glanced at Jianshan from the corner of his eyes, but he did not take it to heart. He casually took out a piece of paper and began to write. He said, Lin Bai, this is the 28th child you've brought. You're just a kind person. You're honest and kind at heart. Perhaps this is why you can reach Class 5 at such a young age. Lin Bai smiled, but he did not say anything. Brat, what's your name? How old are you? Where are you from? When did you discover that you could communicate with Radiant Saint Force? Jiami asked without even raising his head. Jianshan knew that Jiami was asking him, so he answered without thinking. My name is Yang Yuqian. I'm 24 years old this year. I come from a remote mountain village. When I was young, I accidentally discovered that I could communicate with Radiant Saint Masters. Jiami quickly wrote down Jianshan's information on a piece of paper. Then he stood up and said, Come with me. I'll take you to test your abilities as a Radiant Saint Master. Afterward, Jianshan followed Jiami into a secret room at the back of the branch. Lin Bai and his 2 bodyguards also followed. The room was a little dark. The spacious room was empty. The only thing in the room was a fist-sized white stone on a round table in the center. The white stone was like a luminous pearl, emitting a hazy light. Yang Yuqian, use your greatest ability to control Radiant Saint Force, then pour it all into this white stone. Jiami said expressionlessly. Jianshan remained silent. He slowly walked to the white stone. After a moment of hesitation, he slowly extended his right index finger. In an instant, a layer of faint white light appeared between Jianshan's fingers. Then it quickly became stronger. Soon, it became a ball of gentle white light. With the appearance of this white light, the dark room became brighter. This scene caused Jiami and Lin Bai's pupils to suddenly shrink. Jiao Lao, who originally didn't care, suddenly had a pair of bright eyes. This brat can condense Radiant Saint Force so quickly. Jiao Lao sighed in surprise. For the first time, his face became serious. Lin Bai also stared at Jianshan in surprise. He never thought that Jianshan, who looked like a low-level Radiant Saint envoy, could condense Radiant Saint Force so quickly. This speed had completely surpassed him, a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master. At this moment, Jianshan's fingers suddenly touched the white stone in front of him. The Radiant Saint Force at the tip of his finger immediately poured into the white stone. Immediately, the white stone shone with a dazzling light. The light quickly turned from red to orange and then to yellow. Yellow. This Yang Yuqian, who came from a remote village, is actually a Class 3 Radiant Saint Master. A 24-year-old Class 3 Radiant Saint Master. A person with such talent will have great achievements in the future. At the very least, he will become a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master or even a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Jiami stared at the white stone in a daze as he muttered to himself. Then, his eyes gradually became filled with excitement. Suddenly, the yellow light rapidly changed. In the next moment, a dense green light shone from the white stone. Class 4 Radiant Saint Master. He's actually a Class 4 Radiant Saint Master. The vice chairman of the branch, Jiami, could no longer maintain his composure. He cried out hysterically as he stared at Jianshan in disbelief. Lin Bai's gaze towards Jianshan also underwent a drastic change. At this moment, his heart was thumping nonstop. He murmured, I never thought that Brother Yang Yuqian would be a Class 4 Radiant Saint Master at the age of 24. He's no weaker than the prodigy of the Lei family. With such great talent, he can rank in the top 10 of the Holy Emperor's empire. The eyes of the 2 Earth Saint Masters behind Lin Bai suddenly narrowed. They stared at Jianshan in shock. Reaching the Class 4 Radiant Saint Master at the age of 24 was rare in the Holy Emperor's empire. The 2 of them had seen quite a few Radiant Saint Masters in their lives, but those who could reach the Class 4 Radiant Saint Master were all middle-aged men in their 40s or 50s without exception. There were even some people who had spent 70 or 80 years to reach that level. Class 4 Radiant Saint Master. Ha ha, I never thought that Yang Yutian would actually reach the Class 4, Radiant Saint Master. I never thought that a 24-year-old Class 4, Radiant Saint Master would appear in my tiny third-class branch. Jiami was so excited that he could not control himself. He laughed crazily. At this moment, a soft cracking sound rang out in the secret room. A tiny crack suddenly appeared on the white rock used to test Radiant Saint Force. It then rapidly expanded in all directions at an unbelievable speed. In the blink of an eye, the rock became covered in web-like cracks. In the end, with a bang, the entire rock suddenly exploded, falling to the ground in fragments. Jiami's laughter came to a halt as he suddenly became stunned. He stared blankly at the shattered rock on the ground as disbelief filled his eyes. Linbai was stunned as well. His mouth hung wide open as his eyes widened. He said with a trembling voice, "This Class 5, Radiant Saint Master. Impossible. Yang Yutian is only 24 years old. How could he reach Class 5? A 24-year-old Class 5, Radiant Saint Master hasn't appeared on the Tianyuan continent for several millennia." Jiami murmured in a daze. He could not believe what he was seeing. Lin Bai's breathing became heavy. He suddenly turned his head and stared at Jiami. He hurriedly said, "Jiami, what are you standing around for? Why don't you take Brother Yang Yutian to the Central Union to be certified as a Class 5, Radiant Saint Master? This is a great contribution to a vice president of a third-class branch like you." Jiami's body trembled as he immediately reacted. He hurriedly said, Yes. Yang Yutian, come with me to the Central Union to be certified as a Class 5, Radiant Saint Master. At that moment, Jiami, a weak Radiant Saint Master, actually displayed the speed of a fighter. He arrived before Jianshan in a single stride and pulled Jianshan out by the arm without saying anything else. After that, Lin Bai and his 2 personal guards followed closely behind Gammy. On the streets of the City of God, a luxurious carriage with the symbol of the Radiant Saint Master Union quickly rushed through the streets. On both sides of the carriage, there were over a dozen burly men on Class 4 magical beasts escorting it. There were even a few burly men who urged their magical beasts to clear the way. They constantly yelled out, causing the passers-by to discuss. In the City of God, one of the 7 super cities, only the clan that controlled the City of God and the Radiant Saint Master Union dared to run through the streets so recklessly. Chapter 730. Just as Jianshan and Jiami were on their way to the Union, a white-robed old man in his 70s slowly dispersed the dense Radiant Saint force that had gathered around his hands in a rather large, luxurious residence in the City of God. Before the old man hung an exquisite blue badge. The blue badge was the symbol of a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master. It was issued by the Union, and only Class 6, Radiant Saint Masters had the right to wear it. As a result, the old man was a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master. Before the old man, Lei Minggao, who had clashed with Jianshan and had his finger bitten off by the white tiger, sat on a chair as he stretched his finger that had just recovered. Minggao, it's fortunate that you returned to the clan in time with your severed finger. Otherwise, even I wouldn't have been able to heal your finger if the time had dragged on. Only the elders of the Radiant Saint Master Union can do that, the Class 6, Radiant Saint Master emotionlessly replied. Lei Minggao stood up from the chair and politely bowed to the old man. He said, "Thank you, third grandfather, for healing my finger. I will never forget your kindness." The Class 6, Radiant Saint Master, gently sighed. "Minggao, although my lay family has a certain status in the City of God, we can't do whatever we want. There are many clans that are more powerful than my lay family in the City of God. It's best if you don't cause too much trouble outside." Minggao will follow third grandfather's advice. Lei Minggao did not dare to act recklessly before the old man because not only was his third grandfather the only Class 6, Radiant Saint Master in the Lei family, he was also a core member of the Union. His status was extremely great. The Class 6, Radiant Saint Master nodded before leaving the room in exhaustion. Just as the Class 6, Radiant Saint Master left, the respect on Lei Minggao's face immediately vanished. His face sank as he gritted his teeth, A mere low-level Radiant Saint Master actually dares to act so recklessly in front of me. Lei Mingyo. He even severed one of my fingers. If I don't get my revenge, I won't have any face left in the Lei family. Brother, I really like the cub in that low-level Radiant Saint Master's hands. You have to bring it back for me. As soon as Lei Mingrao finished speaking, a woman's voice rang out from outside. The woman with the green Radiant Saint Master insignia walked in. Her face was filled with undisguised arrogance. Lei Minggao immediately smiled when he saw the woman. He said, "Sister, don't worry. I'll definitely bring the cub back for you. Just treat it as a gift from me." Lei Minggao did not dare to show any disrespect to his sister. His sister's status was extremely special in the Lei family. It was much higher than his status as the third young master of the Lei family. This was because his sister's talent was extremely great. She had become a Class 4 Radiant Saint Master at the age of 23, becoming one of the 10 most outstanding geniuses of the younger generation in the City of God. All the senior members of the Lei family had high hopes for her, and she had even been praised by an elder of the Union. He had said that his sister would definitely become a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master within 20 years, or even have the potential to become a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master. As a result, his sister, who was not a direct descendant of the Lei family, possessed a status that completely surpassed his status as the third young master. This was because Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters were all elders of the Union without any exception. They possessed extremely great statuses. Even with the entire Union in perspective, there were only around 20 elders who had reached Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters. At this moment, a guard that Lei Minggao had sent to follow Jianshan hurriedly ran in. He knelt down on one knee and said, "Young Master, the low-level Radiant Saint Master and the Vice President of the 3rd grade branch on the sun-facing street have left in a carriage. They seem to be heading towards the Union in the center of the city." With that, Lei Minggao frowned slightly. After a moment of thought, he murmured, "Why are they going to the Union?" At this moment, the woman with the green insignia thought of something. She murmured to herself, "That low-level Radiant Saint Master seems to have come for a Radiant Saint Master certification. The 3rd grade branch on the sun-facing street can only certify Class 4 Radiant Saint Masters. Once a Radiant Saint Master surpasses Class 4, they have to go to the Union to be certified. Has that Radiant Saint Master already reached Class 5? Lei Mingo's expression immediately changed when he heard her mention Class 5 Radiant Saint Master. He firmly said, "Impossible, absolutely impossible. He looks even younger than me. How can he be a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master?" The woman frowned in thought for a while before coldly staring at the guard. She said, "Prepare a carriage immediately. I want to go to the Union." "Yes, young Miss Lane," the guard replied politely before quickly running off. The woman called young Miss Lei did not hesitate either. She immediately left. Lei Minggao hesitated for a moment as he watched Lei Yin's figure gradually disappear into the distance. Gritting his teeth, he immediately chased after her. "Little sister, wait for me. I'll go with you." The City of God was very big. Luxurious carriages were galloping on the wide roads. The horses didn't stop for a day and a night before they finally arrived at the center of the City of God. They finally stopped in front of a majestic castle. This castle was the headquarters of the Union. It was extremely large, 100 meters tall. The entire castle shone with a gentle white light. It was filled with holiness and a sense of purity. However, the most eye-catching thing was at the very top of the castle. There was a ball of light that was around 10 meters in diameter. The ball of light was completely condensed from pure radiant saint force. It did not disperse, as if it had existed since ancient times. As soon as Jianshan jumped off the carriage, he was stunned by the castle before him. His gaze immediately landed on the ball of dense radiant saint force at the top of the castle. He could feel that there was a vast amount of radiant saint force within the ball of light. The radiant saint force was so powerful that it shocked Jianshan. At this moment, Jiami and Lin Bai also jumped off the carriage with tired expressions. Their gazes were also focused on the ball of light at the top of the castle, just like Jianshan. This item is the symbol of the Union. At the very center of the ball of dense radiant Saint force is the only Saint artifact that can allow a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master to reach Class 7. This item opens once every 50 years. Each time it opens, only 10 people can enter and obtain the opportunity to break through to Class 7. There's only 1 year, 5 months, and 18 days left until the next time it opens. Jiami explained to Jinshin. This matter was no longer a secret in the Holy Emperor's empire. Almost all the Radiant Saint Masters knew about it. Jinshin stared at the ball of powerful Radiant Saint force at the top of the castle. Although there was a Saint artifact that could allow a Radiant Saint Master to reach Class 7, he could not see it at all. The ball of dense Radiant Saint force was just too powerful. There was also an extremely powerful seal around it. Even the senses of his soul could not penetrate it. I never thought that the Union would actually place such a precious Saint artifact here. It looks like they've made thorough preparations for the safety of this Saint artifact. They're not afraid of it being taken away at all. Jinshin thought to himself. He forcefully suppressed some unrealistic thoughts and followed Jiami and Lin Bai into the castle. Jiami led Jinshin through the spacious castle. The castle was filled with Radiant Saint Masters wearing white robes with badges of various colors on their chests. They were talking in groups of 2s and 3s. Jinshin followed Jiami to a counter. Behind the counter sat an old man who also wore a green badge. Jiami, what are you doing here in the Union instead of staying in your branch? Did you find a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master and want to be certified? The old man behind the counter clearly knew Jiami. He laughed as soon as he saw Jiami. He quickly glanced behind Jiami and saw Lin Bai and Jinshin. His gaze stayed on Lin Bai for a while. As for Jinshin, he completely ignored him. Gasol, you're right. I have indeed brought someone here to be certified as a 5th rank Radiant Saint Master. Jiami chuckled. Gasol's gaze sharpened as he carefully looked at Lin Bai. He was secretly shocked. Could it be that this junior has already broken through the 5th rank and reached the 6th rank? Looking at his age, he's probably not even 50 yet. Reaching the 6th rank at such a young age is too inconceivable. This speed is actually several times faster than a martial artist cultivation. Although he was secretly shocked, Gasol did not hesitate. He waved his hand and said, "Let's go. I'll take you to be tested." Before long, Jinshin and the others followed Gasol to a secret room. Gasol took out a thumb-sized bead from a treasure box in the room. He then walked to Lin Bai with a serious expression and said, "Since you've passed the Class 5 Radiant Saint Master test, you should know the rules. I won't say too much." Chapter 731. Gasol didn't give the item to Jinshin. Instead, he gave it to Lin Bai, who was already a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master who wore a cyan badge on his chest. In his opinion, the person who would be tested this time would be Lin Bai without a doubt. After all, Lin Bai's talent was there for all to see. He didn't care about Jiami, who had been friends with him for decades. He knew Jiami very well. Although Jiami's talent was good, he had only become a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master 2 years ago. It was impossible for him to break through again in 2 years, going from Class 5 to Class 6. As for Jinshin, Gasol directly ignored him because Jinshin was really too young. Gasol even thought that Jinshin was Jiami or Lin Bai's disciple. Gasol's actions caused Lin Bai and Jiami to be stunned. Even Jinshin's expression revealed a trace of astonishment. But shortly after, the 3 of them revealed bitter smiles at the same time. They all understood that Gasol had made a mistake about the person who had come for the test. Even the 2 cold-faced Earth Saint Masters behind Lin Bai couldn't help but reveal a rare, amused smile at the sight of this. Gasol saw everyone's strange expressions and felt a wave of doubt. He looked at Lin Bai with some surprise and asked, "Could it be that you aren't the one who will be tested this time?" Lin Bai shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "I am 45 years old, and I only reached Class 5 half a year ago. How can I make another breakthrough in such a short time? Sir, you think too highly of me." Gasol's face revealed a trace of awkwardness. There were quite a few testers in the Radiant Saint Master Union, and Gasol was only one of them. Although Lin Bai had been certified as a rank 5 Radiant Saint Master here, the tester wasn't Gasol, so Gasol didn't know anything about Lin Bai. Gasol looked at his good friend of many years, Jiami, with some envy in his eyes. Although he found it hard to believe, he had to accept the fact that his good friend was already one step ahead of him. Congratulations, Jiami. I didn't think that you would make another breakthrough in these 2 years. You are about to become a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master and have the qualifications to become a core member of the Radiant Saint Master Union. You can practice the Radiant Arcane Arts of the Radiant Saint Master Union, but I don't have the authority to test Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters. Every Class 6 Radiant Saint Master's advancement is carried out by the Elders. Wait a moment. I'll inform the Elders immediately. A jade pendant had its hand and was about to inform the Elders. Jiami immediately extended his hand to stop Gasol's actions. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at Gasol. Gasol, you've really become muddle-headed. You didn't even ask us why we're here for the test, and you've already decided that Lin Bai and I are about to become Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters. Jiami took a small step back, and under Gasol's astonished gaze, he pulled Jianshun in front of him and said proudly, "This is little brother Yang Yutian. Little brother Yang Yutian's talent is extraordinary. He's only 24 this year, and he already has great achievements. When he came to my union for the test, his dense Radiant Saint force actually caused the spirit stones used for the test to explode. Although little brother Yang Yutian is young, he's already a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master. That's why I brought little brother Yang Yutian all the way to the union for the test. Gasol, you old fool. Do you understand now? The testers this time aren't me and Lin Bai, but little brother Yang Yutian." "What? He's the tester? He's already a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master?" Gasol was greatly shocked as he looked at Jianshun with disbelief. Although Class 5 Radiant Saint Masters at the age of 24 were not unheard of on the Tianyuan continent, they were extremely rare. It had already been several thousand years since such a young, high-level Radiant Saint Master had appeared. Jiami smiled complacently and said, "Of course. Gasol, do you think that a Class 4 Radiant Saint Master can make my spirit stones explode? All right, let's cut the crap. Hurry up and test little brother Yang Yutian. I can't wait any longer." Gasol's gaze towards Jianshun had completely changed. He took a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down. Then he handed the thumb-sized bead to Jianshun and said, "The Class 5 Radiant Saint Master test will begin now. Yang Yutian, do your best to control the flow of Radiant Saint Force into this bead. As long as this bead emits a green light, it will mean that you have the qualifications to become a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master. However, I must remind you that this bead is extremely resistant to Radiant Saint Force. It will be very difficult to channel Radiant Saint Force into it, so you must do your best." Jianshun nodded and took the bead from Gasol's hand. With a thought, he immediately controlled the Radiant Saint Force in the surroundings to rapidly condense and channel it into the bead. However, when Jianshun's Radiant Saint Force approached the bead, it immediately encountered resistance that prevented it from entering the bead. Gasol, Lin Bai, and Jiami all stared at Jianshun without blinking. Whether or not Jianshun could become a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master would depend on this step. Jianshun revealed a disdainful sneer. With a light snort, he increased his control of Radiant Saint Force. Immediately, the Radiant Saint Force in the surroundings gathered towards Jianshun at an even faster speed. Then, under Jianshun's pressure, it was forcefully channeled into the bead. The originally ordinary bead immediately emitted a crimson light, and then the light quickly changed from the initial crimson to orange, then from orange to yellow, and finally to green. Gasol's heart began to beat violently. His eyes stared at the bead that was emitting green light, and his hands were already tightly clenched. Even Lin Bai and Jia Mi had the same expression as Gasol. Although Jianshun could explode the spirit stones used for the test and display Radiant Saint Force that exceeded Class 4, this still couldn't determine whether or not Jianshun was a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master. It could only be said that his control of Radiant Saint Force had reached Class 5. Whether or not he could truly become a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master still needed to go through this test. In the past, many people who had taken a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master test had possessed Radiant Saint Force that could explode spirit stones, but they couldn't channel their Radiant Saint Force into the bead, nor could they make the bead emit a green light. Therefore, they could only become Class 4 Radiant Saint Masters. In the eyes of Lin Bai and Jia Mi, although Jianshun had the strength of a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master, he wasn't a true Class 5 Radiant Saint Master. Therefore, when Jianshun reached this step, the two of them paid close attention to him and even had some expectations. At this moment, the green light from the bead shook, and then a green light surged out of the bead, completely replacing the green light. Class 5. Little brother Yang Yutian actually has the strength of a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master. Jiami was so excited that he danced with joy. He was the one who had discovered this genius and had escorted him all the way to the Union for the test. This was a great contribution. Congratulations, brother Yang Yutian, for becoming a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master respected by tens of thousands of people. Lin Bai's face also revealed a happy smile as he hurriedly clasped his hands towards Jianshun. Gasol wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead and looked at Jianshun with envy and jealousy. He said, Yang Yutian, congratulations on becoming the most outstanding Class 5 Radiant Saint Master on the Tian Yuan continent in thousands of years. I hope you can continue to work hard and break through to Class 6 as soon as possible and become a core member of the Radiant Saint Master Union and study the Radiant God. Before Gasol could finish speaking, he suddenly stopped. His eyes suddenly widened as he stared at the bead in Jianshun's hand in disbelief. The green light on the bead in Jianshun's hand darkened at a visible rate, turning blue. After a few breaths, the green light had completely turned dark blue. Blue, blue, blue. How is this possible? No, impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Absolutely impossible. Gasol's eyes widened as he stared at the bead that was emitting a dark blue light. His face was filled with disbelief. Blue light? How is this possible? This is the blue light that symbolizes a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Lin Bai was shocked, and his heart was in turmoil. Jiami was shocked as well. Gammy was also shocked by the scene in front of him. He rubbed his eyes hard and said in a hurried tone, Impossible. How can it emit blue light? My eyes must be playing tricks on me. Yes, my eyes must be playing tricks on me. I must be playing tricks on me. But no matter how hard Jiami rubbed his eyes, the light remained dark blue. It was no longer the green light that he had imagined. Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Yang Yutian is actually a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. A 24-year-old Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Oh my God. Gasol was a bit absent-minded. The shock in his heart had reached an extreme level. He believed that at this moment, he had witnessed a miracle, an unprecedented miracle. A 24-year-old Class 5 Radiant Saint Master was not unheard of on the Tian Yuan continent, but they only appeared once every few thousand years. As for a 24-year-old Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, Gasol had never heard of such a genius. Even in ancient times, there had never been a 24-year-old Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Oh my God, a 24-year-old Class 6 Radiant Saint Master has actually appeared. This is too unbelievable. I will go ask the elders to come out immediately. Gasol immediately rushed out with an unprecedented speed and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Chapter 732. A 24-year-old Rank 6 Radiant Saint Master was truly frightening. Therefore, Gasol went to ask the elders for help very quickly. Very soon, a series of hurried footsteps could be heard from outside the secret room where the Radiant Saint Masters were tested. Two old men with white hair and ruddy complexions wearing luxurious robes hurriedly walked in from outside. These two old men wore very exquisite purple badges on their chests. Gasol, on the other hand, was extremely respectful as he followed beside the two old men. His eyes were filled with respect from the bottom of his heart. It was obvious that these two old men had extraordinary statuses in the Union. Gasol quickly arrived before Jianshun as soon as they entered the testing room. He said respectfully, Esteemed elders, this little brother is Yang Yutian. The person I was talking about is brother Yang Yutian. He has reached Class 6 at the age of 24. The two elders stared at Jianshun with shining eyes. They were unable to suppress their excitement. One of them hurriedly said in a hoarse voice, "Quick, do your best to control the radiant saint force and channel it into the saint bead." Jianshun knew that the saint bead the elder was talking about was the one in his hand. Without any hesitation, he immediately used all his strength to control the radiant saint force in the surroundings and channel it into the bead. At that moment, Jianshun did not hold back at all. This was because he understood that if he wanted a chance at reaching Class 7, he needed to display supreme talent and strength. Only by making all the elders of the Union take notice of him would he have a greater chance of reaching Class 7. As a result, Jianshun no longer kept a low profile like he usually did. For the first time in his life, he acted in a high-profile manner. With Jianshun's full strength, the radiant saint force in the surroundings immediately gathered at an unbelievable speed. Then, it was forced into the saint bead under Jianshun's absolute control. The saint bead immediately shone with a dazzling light. The light quickly changed from the initial scarlet color to orange, yellow, green, and azure in less than 2 seconds. It was actually much faster than Jianshun's first test. The rapid change in color made Lin Bai and Gasol inhale a cold breath. They couldn't help but exclaim, "What a powerful control! Even a rank 7, Radiant Saint Master can't control Radiant Saint power as well as this." Good. He really is a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master, and his control over Radiant Saint Force is actually on par with Class 7, Radiant Saint Masters. Good. Our Radiant Saint Master Union has produced a rare genius today. Ha. An elder laughed heartily. He was extremely excited. "Child, tell me honestly, how old are you this year?" The other elder said with a hoarse voice. His eyes were fixed on Jianshun. Although he remained calm, it was not difficult to tell how excited he was from his trembling body. "Esteemed elder, I am 24 this year." Jianshun clasped his hands at the elder respectfully. The Radiant Saint Master Union used the colors red, orange, yellow, green, azure, blue, and violet to differentiate the ranks of Radiant Saint Masters. The two elders both wore violet badges on their chests. Jianshun had already determined that the two elders were extremely rare Class 7, Radiant Saint Masters on the Tian Yuan continent. Class 7, Radiant Saint Masters were definitely rare even in the entire Tian Yuan continent. There were definitely no more than 50 of them. However, all of these powerful Radiant Saint Masters were gathered in the City of God, so it was not strange for Jianshun to see two of them at once. Good. Child, you're very good. You're the most outstanding genius of our union, the most dazzling person. You'll definitely become a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master in the future and become an elder of our union. Child, come with us first. We'll take you to the second test, the old man said with a hoarse voice as he intimately pulled on Jianshun's arm and led him outside. Esteemed elder, is there a second test? Jianshun asked curiously. He was slightly doubtful. The old man nodded with a smile. He looked at Jianshun as if he was looking at a huge treasure trove. He kindly said, "Child, you can call me the 9th elder. The person beside me is the 14th elder. As for the second test, only Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters will undergo it. It is used to test just how great their talent for Radiant Arts is. Since you're already a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, you obviously have to undergo the second test. Once you pass, you will be able to practice the Radiant Arts as you wish." Radiant Arts? Jianshun murmured. He had heard about the so-called Radiant Arts from the Lei family before. Now that he was hearing about it again, he could not help but feel extremely curious about what the Radiant Arts were. The 9th and 14th elders did not explain anything about the Radiant Arts. They just pulled Jianshun outside. "Go do what you need to do. The second test is not for you to enter. Only when you reach Class 6 will you have the right to enter." Just when Lin Bai and Gasol were about to follow them, they heard the 14th elder's reprimand. With no other choice, the two of them could only remain there, filled with regret. Jianshun followed the 9th and 14th elders through the grand corridors, heading straight for the second floor of the castle. They encountered many Radiant Saint Masters of various ranks along the way, and all of them respectfully bowed and greeted the two elders without exception. Then, they all looked at Jianshun in doubt and curiosity. That's strange. Who is this young man? He's actually so close to two respected elders, many radiant Saint Masters murmured inside. The 9th and 14th elders chatted with Jianshun as they walked, constantly probing about Jianshun's origins and how he had reached class 6 at such a young age. However, Jianshun fooled them with a fake identity that he had thought of long ago. 15 minutes later, Jianshun followed the two elders into a spacious room. The room was extremely large and empty. There was no one else aside from Jianshun and the two elders. A hazy, white mist hovered above the room. It did not disperse, shining with a holy light that illuminated the entire room. Child, this is where the second test for Class 6, Radiant Saint Masters, will take place. This place was created by the combined efforts of several Class 7, Radiant Saint Masters, and a few Saint Rulers. The purest Radiant Saint force in the world has been condensed by the Class 7, Radiant Saint Masters at the top of the room before forcefully compressing it into mist. In the end, a few Saint Rulers will work together to cast a powerful, special barrier to keep the Radiant Saint force trapped inside, so the Radiant Saint force will never disperse. Child, all you need to do is try your best to extract the Radiant Saint force trapped in the barrier, the 9th Elder gently said to Jianshun. Yang Yuqian, the test this time is extremely crucial. It tests your potential to practice Radiant Arts. Radiant Arts are the only means of attack for Radiant Saint Masters, so their importance goes without saying. As a result, you have to do your best, the 14th Elder said sternly. Jianshun's eyes lit up. He nodded solemnly before slowly closing his eyes. He stood there without moving at all. The 9th and 14th Elders shifted their gazes away from Jianshun as well. They stared at the dense Radiant Saint force above the room without blinking. Suddenly, the barrier above the room began to pulse violently. The Radiant Saint force that had been condensed into mist began to pulse slowly as well. Gradually, the pulse became more and more intense, and it affected a greater and greater area. Very soon, all the Radiant Saint force sealed within the barrier began to pulse violently. The 9th and 14th Elders both frowned when they saw this. They thought, Yang Yuqian is far too reckless. He really is young and hot-blooded. He actually didn't understand what was going on first and tried to control all the Radiant Saint force right from the start. The barrier doesn't just prevent the Radiant Saint force from dispersing. The true test is yet to come. Jianshun was a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master in the first place. Coupled with the fact that his innate talent was extremely powerful and that he had fused with the Sword Spirits, he could control all the Radiant Saint force within the barrier without any effort at all. Afterwards, he immediately controlled the Radiant Saint force to break free from the barrier and gather before him. However, as soon as the Radiant Saint force approached the barrier, an extremely powerful resistance immediately appeared, preventing the Radiant Saint force from crossing the barrier. It forcefully stopped the Radiant Saint force. Jianshun sneered and immediately increased his control. Afterward, he gritted his teeth and forcefully extracted a strand of Radiant Saint force from the barrier. However, in the next moment, a powerful suction force suddenly appeared from the barrier, pulling back the strand of Radiant Saint force that Jianshun had extracted. Jianshun became rather stern. He knew that the true test had arrived, so he no longer held back. He strengthened his control over the Radiant Saint force again, withstanding the powerful suction from the barrier. He slowly pulled the Radiant Saint force out of the barrier and condensed it before his chest. The Radiant Saint force sealed in the barrier was forcefully extracted bit by Jianshun. Gradually, the Radiant Saint force that Jianshun had condensed became more and more powerful. The white light it emitted became more and more dazzling. In the end, it seemed like a sun shining with blinding light. The 9th and 14th Elders widened their eyes at the same time as they stared at this scene in disbelief. What Jianshun had done was just far too shocking. It was already very difficult for regular Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters to control a small amount of Radiant Saint force to leave the barrier, Yet Jianshun had managed to pull out a small portion of the sealed Radiant Saint Force. They found this very unbelievable because the more Radiant Saint Force that was pulled out of the barrier, the more powerful the suction force would be. Even with their Class 7 Radiant Saint Force, they could only pull out 50% of the Radiant Saint Force at most, yet a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master had managed to pull out 40% of the Radiant Saint Force. They found this to be very unbelievable because the more Radiant Saint Force that was pulled out of the barrier, the more powerful the suction force would be. Even with their Class 7 Radiant Saint Force, they could only pull out 50% of the Radiant Saint Force at most, yet a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master had managed to pull out 40% of it. A genius, a genius. He really is a genius. This kid is basically an innately powerful Radiant Saint Master. The 14th Elder could not help but sigh in amazement. The 9th Elder didn't say anything. Instead, he pulled out a jade pendant from his clothes and sent his mind into the jade pendant. Immediately, the space around the jade pendant rippled slightly. The mind that the 9th Elder had sent into the jade pendant was transmitted in a strange way. An old man currently sat on a cushion in the tower at the very top of the headquarters of the Radiant Saint Masters. Dense Radiant Saint Force enveloped him. Suddenly, the Radiant Saint Force around the old man trembled before disappearing in a single instance. The old man suddenly opened his eyes and murmured, "An emergency message. I wonder what's going on for them to use an emergency message to contact me." An exquisite jade pendant had appeared in the old man's hand unknowingly. A weak consciousness emerged from the jade pendant, directly entering the old man's forehead. Chapter 733. An old man quickly appeared at the entrance of the second test in the Union's headquarters as if he was standing on a cloud. The old man had white hair and a ruddy complexion. His eyes were as deep as the starry sky, giving people the feeling that they would become lost if they did not pay attention. The old man wore luxurious white robes, but he did not wear a badge of any color. It was impossible to tell what class of Radiant Saint Master the old man was. As soon as the old man arrived at the entrance of the second test, his eyes were immediately drawn away by the dazzling light inside. Through the white light, he could vaguely see a slender person bathed in the white light. He was filled with a sense of holiness, as if he was a god that had descended. The 9th and 14th Elders were completely stunned as they stood nearby. They stared at Jianshan blankly, completely unaware that an old man had appeared at the entrance. Jianshan had already closed his eyes tightly. He spread his arms wide and raised his head high. His forehead was facing the sky as he did his best to pull out the sealed Radiant Saint Force. At that moment, he had unleashed the limits of his abilities as a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. He did not hold back at all, because he understood that this might be an extremely crucial step if he wanted to break through to the 7th class. Only with glorious accomplishments would he be valued by the Union, which would make his path to the 7th class even smoother. This was because he understood many things. Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters were extremely rare on the Tian Yuan continent because almost all of them were gathered in the City of God. As a result, there were definitely many Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters in the City of God, and a few of them might have powerful organizations supporting them. Although he had become a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master at such a young age and was the center of attention, he did not have the support of any organization after all. It was possible that the Radiant Saint Masters behind him would secretly scheme against him and squeeze him out of the chance to reach the 7th class. As a matter of fact, Jianshan was rather worried that some people within the Radiant Saint Master organization would try to squeeze him out of the organization in order to increase his chances of reaching the 7th class. Jianshan had considered keeping a low profile so that no one would pay attention to him, but that was impossible. Only Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters had the right to reach the 7th class, so it was impossible for him to hide his strength. After all, becoming a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master at the age of 24 was a miraculous existence. However, Jianshan felt that this alone was not enough. Coupled with his curiosity towards the Radiant Arts, he put in so much effort in the second part of the test because the second part tested one's potential for practicing the radiant arts. 45% of the radiant saint force sealed in the barrier above Jianshan had left the barrier under his control. It gathered around Jianshan and shone brightly. This step was already Jianshan's limit. Now, no matter how hard Jianshan tried, he was unable to control any of the radiant saint force to leave the barrier. Looks like this is as far as I can go. I wonder what my results will be like. Jianshan sighed inside. He slowly dispersed the radiant saint force he had forcefully pulled out of the barrier. The radiant saint force that had gathered around Jianshan did not disperse. Instead, it was sucked back in by the powerful suction from the barrier, returning it to its original state before Jianshan arrived. Jianshan slowly opened his eyes. A rare sliver of exhaustion appeared on his face. Although this test had only taken Jianshan less than an hour, it had drained most of his mental energy. He had never felt so exhausted ever since reaching Class 6. Jianshan turned around in exhaustion and discovered the stunned 9th and 14th elders with a single glance. His heart skipped a beat, and a sliver of joy immediately appeared in the depths of his eyes. He clasped his hands. Elders, my test has ended. May I ask what my results are? If this was before, Jianshan would have been rather uneasy about his results, but ever since he saw the expressions of the 9th and 14th elders, he had an idea. Good, 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 very good. This is an extremely good result. To be able to control 45% of the Radiant Saint Force to break free from the barrier as a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, you have the potential to be a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master. This old man has truly opened his eyes today. As soon as Jianshan finished speaking, an old voice rang out from the entrance. The old man who had been standing at the entrance walked in with large strides. His gaze towards Jianshan was filled with praise and amazement. The old man's voice roused the 9th and 14th elders. When they saw who it was, their expressions changed. They immediately clasped their hands towards the old man. Greetings to the president. Afterwards, the 9th elder immediately turned to Jianshan and called out, Yang Yuqian, this is the president of our union. Hurry up and greet him. Jianshan was slightly surprised. Without any hesitation, he immediately clasped his hands towards the old man. Yang Yuqian greets the president. The president smiled as he looked at Jianshan. He asked kindly, Child, you're Yang Yuqian, right? Tell me, how old are you this year? President, Yang Yuqian is 24 years old this year. Jianshan immediately replied. He knew extremely well that in the Union, the president's authority was greater than anything else. The status of the elders was below the president. It was slightly different from the hierarchy of some clans. A 24-year-old Class 6 Radiant Saint Master with the potential to reach Class 7 in Radiant Arcana. Good, good, good. The president's face lit up with joy. Discovering such a genius today made him extremely excited. Soon after, the president seemed to think of something. His eyes immediately lit up, and he said, Yang Yuqian, are you willing to accept me as your master and join the Radiant Saint Master Union as a core member? A sliver of surprise flashed through Jianshan's eyes. The president of the union had actually accepted him as a disciple. This had completely exceeded Jianshan's expectations. The president noticed the surprise on Jianshan's face, and he could not help but smile. He thought that Jianshan had been stunned by this sudden surprise. He smiled. Yang Yuqian, are you still unwilling to accept me as your master? Although he said that, there was no displeasure in his voice at all. Jianshan gritted his teeth and thought, whatever, in order to successfully break through to Class 7 and save my parents. So what if I'm willing to accept someone as my master? Compared to my parents' lives, what's a mere dignity? Thinking up to there, Jianshan deeply bowed to the president and said, I'm willing. Disciple Yang Yuqian greets master. Congratulations to the president for accepting such an outstanding disciple. You're too polite. The 9th and 14th elders congratulated at the same time. The president laughed heartily. He then took out an exquisite blue badge from his space ring and passed it to Jianshan. He said, Yang Yuqian, you're the third disciple old man has accepted in his life. The first disciple passed away 100 years ago due to the end of his lifespan, while the second disciple is also a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. He's currently in seclusion cultivating the Radiant Arcana, preparing to reach Class 7 in a year. This blue badge is the symbol of a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Wear it. Yes, Master. Jianchen carefully accepted the blue badge from the president and wore it on the left side of his chest. 9th Elder, 14th Elder, I'll leave it to the two of you to explain the rules of the Radiant Saint Master Union and other aspects of treatment to my third disciple. The president turned around and said to the two elders, As you wish, President. The president clearly possessed great prestige in the hearts of the 9th and 14th elders. The two elders behaved politely. Disciple, go with the two elders first. Come back here in 3 days and undergo the ceremony to become a core member. Once you've officially become a core member, you can enter the Tower of Radiance to learn the various Radiant Arcana. The president turned around to look at Jianchen. However, when he mentioned the ceremony to become a core member, a strange light flashed through the depths of his eyes. Jianchen's curiosity towards the Radiant Arcana increased drastically when he heard about it again. He could not help but ask, Master, what are the Radiant Arcana? The president smiled gently. The Radiant Arcana is the only attack method of Radiant Saint Masters. There are many types, and they are ever-changing. Disciple, once you become a core member and enter the Tower of Radiance, you'll naturally understand them clearly. All right, there's one more thing I have to remind you of. It's best if you avoid contact with the people of the Karza clan, Kara clan, and Zar clan for the time being. The Holy Emperor's empire seems peaceful right now, but a storm is brewing underneath. The Holy Emperor's empire that has been peaceful for countless years is about to change. However, this matter concerns the 3 clans. Whoever ends up with the Holy Emperor's empire has nothing to do with the Radiant Saint Master Union. You're not a member of the 3 clans, so it's best if you don't get involved in this matter. I understand, Jianchen purposely replied politely. The president nodded in satisfaction when he saw Jianchen's behavior. Afterwards, a white cloud completely condensed from Radiant Saint Force rapidly appeared beneath his feet. Under Jianchen's surprised gaze, he left on the cloud. Yang Yuqian, did you see that? The ability the president used when he left was a Radiant Arcana. He can fly and move extremely quickly. If he cultivates it to a high enough level, he'll be no slower than a saint ruler's control over spatial force. The 9th Elder stared at Jianchen with a smile. The talent Jianchen had displayed and the fact that he had become the president's disciple had made the 2 Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters treat him completely. If it were any other Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, they would not even bother to pay attention to him. The Radiant Arcana is the only attack method of Radiant Saint Masters. I really am looking forward to it more and more. I wonder just how powerful Radiant Saint Masters, who are known to be powerless on the Tianyuan continent, will become after learning the Radiant Arcana, Jianchen thought. He began to look forward to the day when he would enter the Tower of Radiance to learn the Radiant Arcana in 3 days. Chapter 734. After leaving the 9th and 14th Elders, Jianchen directly made his way out of the Radiant Saint Union's headquarters. There were many people in the headquarters of the Radiant Saint Master Union. Not only were there many white-robed Radiant Saint Masters with various badges on their chests, there were also a few people dressed as fighters. Although these fighters were not Radiant Saint Masters, they were all members of the Union. Without a doubt, the blue badge on Jianchen's chest became the center of attention. All the people who brushed past Jianchen could not help but glance at Jianchen in surprise and shock. However, even more people stared at the extremely dazzling badge on Jianchen's chest. They could not hide the envy in their eyes. Who is this person? He's actually wearing a blue badge. The blue badge is the symbol of a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Is this young man in his 20s actually a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master? This young man only seems to be in his 20s, yet he actually has the right to wear a blue badge. That's just unbelievable. I think the blue badge on him is probably fake. I'll report this to the 9th Elder immediately. How bold of him to wear a fake badge in the Union. I'll make sure he's in for it later. Jian-Shun said with a frown. Which family's young master is this? He's actually a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master at such a young age. I've spent so much time in the City of God, so I have some understanding of the high-class Radiant Saint Masters. Why haven't I heard of this person's existence? I don't think this person is as young as he seems. He's probably an old monster who's lived for several hundred years. He's just using some special method to regain his youth. Soft discussions rang out in the surroundings. Jinshin's appearance had already attracted everyone's attention. This was because a Radiant Saint Master with a blue badge was already a great figure. They were not very common in the Union, but every time they appeared, they would attract the attention of many people without exception. Jinshin ignored the discussions in the surroundings. He had already become accustomed to being watched by tens of thousands of people. He then glanced around and saw that the Radiant Saint Masters in the surroundings were basically all Class 2 to Class 4. Even Class 5, Radiant Saint Masters with blue badges were extremely rare. As for Class 6, Radiant Saint Masters with blue badges, there was no one else aside from him. Jinshin passed through the corridor and arrived at the first floor of the Radiant Saint Master Union's headquarters. As soon as he walked down the corridor, he saw the excited Lin Bai, Gasol, and Jiami jogging over. Brother Yang Yutian, congratulations on becoming a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Jiami congratulated Jinshin as soon as he arrived, but his gaze remained fixed on the blue badge on Jinshin's chest. His eyes were filled with envy. Brother Yang Yutian, you've been hiding so much from me this entire time. I never thought that you would actually be a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, Lin Bai said bitterly. His gaze constantly flickered over the blue badge on Jinshin's chest. Jinshin was easygoing and his tone was amiable. He did not seem arrogant at all. After casually chatting with Lin Bai, Jiami, he bid farewell to them and planned on strolling around the streets to see if he could find some materials for forging the Azulet swords. Brother Yang Yutian, I, Lin Bai, am an idle person. I just happen to have nothing to do. So why don't I take you around the City of God? I, Lin Bai, have lived in the City of God for a few decades. Although I dare not say that I know the City of God like the back of my hand, I know quite a few famous places, Lin Bai said. In that case, I'll have to trouble you, Brother Lin Bai. Jinshin clasped his hands towards Lin Bai and smiled. Brother Yang Yutian, as the vice president of the branch, I can't leave the Union for too long, so I must hurry back. I can't accompany you. So please don't blame me. Jiami also bid farewell to Jinshin and left happily. He had just received news that the Union was very satisfied with his performance, and that he would be promoted to the president of a second-class branch soon. His authority would be much greater than that of a third-class vice president. After Jinshin and Lin Bai bid farewell to the Union's tester, Gasol, they walked out. At this moment, Lei Ming-ao, who had a conflict with Jinshin on the way, was led in by his little sister, Lei. They had just stepped through the Union's gate when they bumped into Jinshin. Almost subconsciously, Lei Ming-ao and his little sister, Lei, looked at Jinshin's chest. When they saw the exquisite dark blue badge, their expressions changed greatly, and their eyes revealed looks of disbelief. Blue badge. How is this possible? Lei Ming-ao's face instantly turned pale. At this moment, he almost couldn't believe his eyes. After seeing Jinshin's blue badge, even the proud and arrogant Lei turned pale with fright. She muttered in a daze, Impossible. How is this possible? Lei Ming-ao, don't tell me you two want to steal Brother Yang Yutian's cub. Lin Bai stared coldly at the two. Although their clans were quite powerful, Lin Bai was a Class 5, Radiant Saint Master who had the potential to become a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master in the future. With the protection of the Radiant Saint Master Union, he naturally didn't fear a mere Lei family. Lin Bai's words caused Lei Ming-ao and Lei Yin's expressions to change again. Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters were already core members of the Union. They were not people they could afford to offend. Even the Lei family didn't want to become enemies with Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters so easily. Jinshin glanced at Lei Ming-ao and his little sister emotionlessly. He didn't take them seriously at all. With his status as a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master and Saint Ruler, he had no interest in competing with them at all. Uncle Lin Bai, let's go. Let's not waste our precious time with them. Jianshun and Lin Bai directly walked past Lei Ming Ao and Lei Yin. I never thought that he would actually be a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. It's just unbelievable that he's so young, Lei Yin murmured. Her emotions were extremely mixed, but a gleam of light flashed through her eyes. She said, I need to tell third grandfather about this as soon as possible. Thinking up to there, Lei Yin turned around and left. She completely ignored Lei Ming Ao, who had yet to return to his senses. Jianshun and Lin Bai strolled along the streets. After some conversation, Jianshun gained some understanding of Lin Bai's background. Lin Bai was not a disciple of a rich family, so he had no background at all. His hometown was in a remote mountain range. The people there all made a living by farming and farming. Lin Bai's parents were very ordinary people in the village, but their son was fated to be extraordinary. Not only was he the smartest child in the village, but Lin Bai had unintentionally discovered his abilities as a Radiant Saint Master when he was young. From then on, he became the most dazzling prodigy in the entire village. Lin Bai's talent as a Radiant Saint Master was extremely great. He had spent over a decade in the village, and when he was 20, he had already reached Class 3. Afterwards, he was accidentally discovered by a Heaven Saint Master who was out on a mission. He was brought to the City of God by the Heaven Saint Master and joined the Radiant Saint Master Union. At the same time, he became the disciple of a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. From then on, Lin Bai's life underwent a drastic change, allowing him to become an outstanding Class 5 Radiant Saint Master in his 40s. Even in the Radiant Saint Master Union, he possessed a certain level of fame and was greatly valued by the upper echelon of the Union. There were even a few large clans in the City of God who came to rope in Lin Bai, but they were all rejected by him. Jianshan and Lin Bai passed through the streets and alleys, constantly going in and out of various shops. They only found an inn when the sky turned dark. At the same time, in the brightly lit Lei family, Lei Yin, dressed in a white robe and wearing a green badge, came to the front of a tall tower. She stood respectfully in front of a tightly shut door and said, Third Grandpa, Lei Yin has something to report. The tightly shut door was slowly opened, and a soft white light immediately spread out from the crack of the door, dispelling the darkness outside. Lei Yin, come in. An old voice rang out from inside. Yes, third grandfather. Lei Yin lowered her head and walked in gently. She saw an old man sitting on a cushion with his legs crossed. The old man closed his eyes and made a strange gesture with his hand. A ball of dense, radiant saint force enveloped his entire body. The radiant saint force was extremely active, constantly expanding and contracting. Lei Yin stopped 3 meters away from the old man and said, Great-grandfather, I saw a person in his 20s outside the Radiant Saint Master Union today. He's a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. The Radiant Saint force around the old man pulsed violently. His eyes suddenly snapped open and he said in surprise, What? A Class 6 Radiant Saint Master in his 20s? Lei Yin, are you sure you saw correctly? Brother Lei Mingho was there as well. If you don't believe me, you can ask Brother Lei Mingho or the people of the Union, Lei Yin said politely. Chapter 735. Very soon, a weak consciousness emerged from the jade pendant and entered the old man's forehead. The old man closed his eyes and thought for a while, before suddenly opening them again. He said in surprise, I never thought that it would actually be true. There really is a person called Yang Yuqian who has passed the test to become a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master at the age of 24. Isn't Yang Yuqian's talent just too great? It really is unbelievable. But since he's a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, he'll definitely participate in the competition between Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters in a year's time. It looks like the light in the old man's eyes flickered with uncertainty. He waved his hand at Lei Yin and said, Lei Yin, you can leave. Yes, third grandpa. Lei Yin respectfully retreated. After Lei Yin left, the heavy door closed again. The old man stood in the completely sealed room with his head lowered in thought. Afterward, he took out the jade pendant and a consciousness emerged from his forehead, disappearing into the jade pendant. In the city of God, in a luxurious mansion, a gentle middle-aged man was sitting cross-legged on a bed. In front of the middle-aged man's chest was a half-meter-long short sword that emitted a gentle light as it floated in the air. Within the short sword, there was an extremely powerful energy fluctuation. The scholarly middle-aged man stared at the dagger completely condensed from radiant saint force and gently sighed. There's still a year and a half before the door to the saint artifact opens again. My radiant arcana is still stuck at the 3rd level. I'm very dissatisfied with the progress I've made in the past 50 years. I wonder if I'll be able to make it into the top 10 again in half a year's time. Suddenly, the middle-aged man's expression changed. With a flip of his hand, an ancient jade pendant appeared in his hand. A weak thought came out of the jade pendant and drilled into the middle of the middle-aged man's eyebrows at lightning speed. The middle-aged man closed his eyes and thought for a while before slowly opening them. A strange light appeared in his eyes as he sighed in amazement. There's actually someone who can reach class 6 at the age of 24. Is this true? Isn't that too inconceivable? Wouldn't the speed of improvement be several times faster than a martial artist's cultivation? If this news is true, then the Lei family has done a great service. The middle-aged man dispersed the condensed radiant saint force and stood up from the bed. He paced around the luxurious room as he pondered. Soon after, the middle-aged man's footsteps paused. His gaze looked towards the door as he cried out in a low voice, "Mr. Phone." The door was silently opened, and a burly bald man walked in from outside. He cupped his hands towards the middle-aged man and said, "Respected Mr. Chung, what can I do for you?" The middle-aged man said, "Mr. Phone, a genius has appeared in the Radiant Saint Master Union today. He has reached the 6th class at such a young age. His name is Yang Yutian. Go investigate his whereabouts immediately. Once you find him, tell him that I, Chung Duan Tian, sincerely wish to befriend him. In 2 days, I will be booking the most famous pleasure boat on the Fragrance River 20 kilometers outside the city. I hope to meet him." "Yes, respected Mr. Chung. I'll get to it immediately," the bald man said with a deep voice. "Mr. Feng, I don't know if Yang Yutian is still in the Union. If he isn't, you can use the power of your clan to search for him." The moment the bald man left, the middle-aged man's indifferent voice rang out from the room again. At the same time, many important people in various places in the City of God received the same piece of news. At that moment, basically all the large clans and organizations in the City of God knew that a 24-year-old 6th-class Radiant Saint Master had appeared in the Union. In another mansion in the City of God, an old voice rang out from a well-guarded courtyard. "A genius has appeared in the Radiant Saint Master Union. He's only 24 years old, yet he's already a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. His talent is truly rare. Xiaoho, immediately go find him with some people and invite him to my marquee estate as an esteemed guest. Remember, do not become enemies with him." "Yes, sir." An icy cold voice rang out from outside. Afterwards, a black figure flickered slightly and shot off into the distance with great speed. In the southern region of the City of God, an ordinary-looking middle-aged man sat cross-legged in a gloomy underground secret room, practicing radiant arcane arts. The dense, milky white light illuminated the gloomy secret room like it was daytime. Moreover, the entire secret room was enveloped in a layer of dense heat, as if it was in a sea of fire. The heat completely originated from Radiant Saint Force. If a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master were to come here, they would definitely be extremely shocked, as this was a phenomenon that would only occur when one cultivated the Radiant Arts to a high level. Even among all the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters in the City of God, there are definitely not more than 10 who could cultivate the Radiant Arts to such a level. Suddenly, the middle-aged man's face changed. The scorching Radiant Saint Force immediately dispersed, and a jade pendant silently appeared in his hand. A consciousness immediately entered his forehead from the jade pendant. The middle-aged man closed his eyes and thought for a while before slowly opening them. He said with a deep voice, "A 24-year-old Class 6 Radiant Saint Master with the potential to cultivate the radiant arts that is close to a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master. At the same time, you're the President's third disciple. Yang Yuqian, you make me feel slightly threatened. A weak, cold light flashed through the middle-aged man's eyes, and the door to the room slowly opened. Dense, radiant saint force quickly gathered below his feet, forming a cloud. The middle-aged man left as if he was standing on a cloud. After leaving the room, the middle-aged man gazed at the pitch-black starry sky and casually said, "Shadow, a genius has appeared in the Union recently. He's called Yang Yuqian, and he's a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Go find him immediately and invite him to the estate. I want to talk to him." "Yes, young master." A hoarse voice sounded from a dark corner behind the middle-aged man. Soon after, a gentle breeze blew past, and everything quickly returned to normal. It was deep into the night. Jianchun was currently resting in a luxurious inn. He had no idea that his actions today had attracted the attention of many large clans and organizations in the City of God. "Sigh, I've been running around for an entire day, but I haven't found any materials for forging the twin swords. If this continues, who knows when I'll be able to gather all the materials," Jianchun murmured to himself as he lay on his bed. He felt slightly disappointed inside. Radiant arts are the only means of attack for Radiant Saint Masters. I wonder just how powerful they are. I really do look forward to when I enter the Tower of Radiance in 3 days. With a thought, Jianchun thought of the radiant arts and immediately became tempted. He was tempted to go to the Tower of Radiance right now and witness the only means of attack for Radiant Saint Masters, the radiant arts. Suddenly, a gleam of light flashed through Jianchun's eyes. He immediately sat up from his bed and stared in the direction of the door with interest. The tightly shut door was silently opened, and a person shrouded in black fog silently walked in from the outside. His face couldn't be seen, and only the rough outline of his body could be seen, as if he was a ghost. Jianchun stared at the shrouded person calmly and asked softly, "Who are you? Are you Yang Yuqian?" The shrouded person replied with a hoarse question. "That's right, it's me." Jianchun showed no fear at all. The person before him seemed strange, but he was only a fighter with darkness-attributed saint force. He was only a heaven saint master. "Yang Yuqian, my young master wishes to speak with you. Come with me." The black figure's hoarse voice was filled with coldness. "Who is your young master?" Jianchun calmly asked. "You'll know the identity of my young master when you get there," the black figure replied. Jianchun sneered. He lazily leaned against the pillow and did not even glance at the black figure. He said, "Sorry, I need a rest. I don't have time to see your young master. Sir, please leave my room." "Yang Yuqian, you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit." Blackhearted's tone gradually turned cold, and a thick layer of killing intent emanated from his body. Roar. Perhaps it had sensed the murderous aura emitted by the black shadow, but the little white tiger that was lying on the pillow immediately stood up. It raised its head and puffed out its chest as it glared at the black shadow. In its lively eyes, there was even a very human-like look of provocation. Although the white tiger was still a Class 5 magical beast, equivalent to an Earth Saint Master, it showed no fear at all when facing the black figure who was a Heaven Saint Master. It even took the initiative to provoke him. Clearly, it did not take a Heaven Saint Master seriously. "Shadow, don't forget where you are. Don't tell me you dare to attack a respected Class 6 Radiant Saint Master." Suddenly, a deep voice came from outside, and a burly bald man walked in, his feet not touching the ground. "Umph, phone jamming, you've come at a bad time," the black figure coldly snorted. Clearly, he recognized the bald man. The bald phone jamming coldly glanced at the black figure and sneered. "You only know how to act mysterious and scare people. It's as if you're afraid that people don't know you have darkness-attributed saint force. In my eyes, your actions are no different from an idiot." "What did you say?" The black figure violently trembled. Its hoarse voice was filled with anger. "Shadow, if you can't accept this, then let's fight again. Let's see who's stronger. However, I, phone jamming, have a mission right now, so I don't have time to waste on you. Once I complete the mission from Mr. Chung, I'll be waiting for you to challenge me at any time, the bald man coldly said. Oomph. The black figure coldly snorted and immediately fell silent. Feng Jiaming looked at Jianshin and the coldness on his face disappeared. He immediately changed into a different expression and politely bowed to Jianshin. He said, Esteemed Sir Yang Yutian, I, Feng Jiaming, have a message from Mr. Chung. Mr. Chung sincerely wishes to befriend you and has booked the most famous pleasure boat on the Fragrance River 20 kilometers away from the City of God in 2 days. He hopes to use this opportunity to have a good chat with Sir Yang Yutian. Mr. Chung, Jinshin's heart skipped a beat. He looked at the bald man and said, Is it the Chung family, one of the 8 great clans second only to the Tsar family in the City of God? Chapter 736. Jinshin had gained a rough understanding of the power structure in the City of God from the 9th and 14th elders. The most powerful clan in the City of God was the Tsar family. The City of God, one of the 7 capital cities of the Tianyuan continent, had been completely taken over by the Tsar family. Without any exaggeration, the Tsar family was the ruler of the City of God. At the same time, they were one of the 3 clans that controlled the fate of the Holy Emperor's empire. Below the Tsar clan, there were 8 other great clans. These 8 great clans were extremely strong, and they were not any weaker than the hermit clans. Among them, there were even some clans whose strength had surpassed many of the hermit clans. The Chung family was one of the 8 clans. The Lei family that had clashed with Jianshan on the way here could only be regarded as a rather famous clan in the City of God. They were only a second-rate clan. Clans like that could be found everywhere in the City of God, but most of them were vassals to the 8 clans. Feng Jiaming secretly rejoiced when he saw the surprise on Jianshin's face. He smiled. Sir Yang Yutian has guessed correctly. Mr. Chung belongs to one of the 8 clans in the City of God, the Chung family. Mr. Chung possesses a very high status in the Chung family. I'm truly sorry. I will be going to the Tower of Radiance to study the radiant arts in the next few days, so I won't be able to make it. Please pass on your question to Mr. Chung. I appreciate Mr. Cheng's good intentions, but I'm afraid I won't be able to make it to the boat on the Fragrance River in 2 days. Jianshan clasped his hands at Feng Jiaming and said calmly. Feng Jiaming was slightly stunned. He had never thought that Jianshan would actually turn him down after he mentioned that he was from one of the 8 clans. He was rather surprised by this. Although his invitation had failed, Feng Jiaming did not show any displeasure at all. He clasped his hands at Jianshan. Since Sir Yang Yutian wants to go to the Tower of Radiance to learn the radiant arts, I won't disturb you any longer. Sir Yang Yutian, I have already completed my mission, so I will report back to Mr. Chung. Farewell. With that, Feng Jiaming looked at the black shadow beside him. His face immediately turned cold, and he said, Shadow, I hope you don't forget about the rules of the Union. Once you break them, you won't be able to escape punishment even if your clan supports you. You might even die. Feng Jiaming, I don't need you to meddle in my affairs. A hoarse voice rang out from the black mist. It was filled with coldness. Feng Jiaming sneered. Esteemed Sir Yang Yutian is Mr. Cheng's guest, as well as an esteemed guest of the Chung family. If anything happens to Sir Yang Yutian, Shadow, you know the consequences. With that, Feng Jiaming turned around and left. Feng Jiaming. Not only is it a symbol of status as a core member of the Union, but it can also allow you to communicate with other core members within a certain range. An ancient jade pendant had appeared in the 5th Elder's hand out of nowhere. He passed it to Jianshan with a smile. His smile was filled with benevolence. Jianshan accepted the jade pendant from the 5th Elder without any change in expression. The jade pendant was half the size of a palm. It was covered in the marks of time, and there were complicated diagrams engraved on both sides of the jade pendant. Yang Yutian, Remember that only you can use this psychic jade. You can't give it to anyone else because this jade is extremely precious. It has been passed down since ancient times, and there aren't many left. Other than the core members of the Union, only a small number of important members of the Union have the right to wear it. The fifth elder's calm voice was filled with a rare sense of sternness. Yang Yutian understands. Jianshan clasped his hands slightly before stowing the psychic jade away in his space ring. The fifth elder nodded in satisfaction and said, Yang Yutian, you're now a core member of the Union. This psychic jade will be a symbol of your status. With this, you can enter the Tower of Radiance to learn radiant arts. Moreover, the method to use the psychic jade is recorded in the jade pendant. You only need to send your consciousness into the jade pendant to learn it. All right, the old man needs to rest, so you can leave. The Tower of Radiance is at the very top of the castle, so you can enter without any obstructions with this jade pendant. Jianshan left the fifth elder's room. His eyes immediately became cold as a sliver of heavy killing intent flashed through his eyes. However, it returned to normal immediately, as if nothing had happened. Esteemed Master Yang Yutian, may I ask how I can be of service to you? A gentle voice rang out from beside Jianshan. The woman who had led Jianshan there spoke to Jianshan politely. I'm not familiar with this place. Take me to the Tower of Radiance, Jianshan said emotionlessly. Yes, Master Yang Yutian. However, I don't have the right to enter the Tower of Radiance. I can only take you to the entrance, said the female attendant. It's fine. Lead the way. After Jianshan's departure, a figure completely condensed from a screen of light appeared out of nowhere in the fifth elder's room. If Jianshan were present, he would definitely recognize this person as his master, the president of the Union. Fifth elder, has everything gone smoothly? The president of the Radiant Saint Master Union stared at the fifth elder. His deep gaze seemed to be able to see through the fifth elder's soul. Although they were both Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters, the fifth elder behaved extremely politely before the president. He said, President, this Yang Yutian really is quite capable. He actually managed to escape from my soul-absorbing eye the first time, forcing me to use the soul-absorbing technique. However, everything has gone very smoothly. It's just that the soul-absorbing technique took quite a lot of effort from me. The president was extremely satisfied with the fifth elder's report. He said, Yang Yuqian's talent is extremely great, especially in terms of his potential to cultivate the radiant arts. He's already approaching Class 7, Radiant Saint Master. If he reaches Class 7, he might be able to reach my current level of cultivation in the radiant arts. As a result, we need to treat him seriously. You're absolutely right, President. We can't let go of such a genius, said the fifth elder. And I have a strange feeling that in the future, Yang Yutian might become the first Class 8 Radiant Saint Master since ancient times, the president said after some thought. He was stern. What? The fifth elder was shocked. He stared at the president in disbelief. The president ignored the fifth elder's shock and continued. Fifth elder, the news of Yang Yutian will definitely reach the ears of the three clans of the Holy Emperor's Empire. The Holy Emperor's Empire is not at peace right now, so Yang Yutian's safety is of utmost importance. I'll leave this matter to you. Yes, President. After he was done, the president's figure disappeared as if he had never been there in the first place. Jianshan followed the attendant to the entrance of the castle emotionlessly. The light in his eyes flickered, and no one knew what he was thinking. The Tower of Radiance was at the very top of the castle. It was the symbolic structure of the Radiant Saint Master Union. At the top of the Tower of Radiance was the 10-meter-wide ball of pure Radiant Saint Force that Jianshan had seen when he first arrived. The only Saint artifact that could break through to Class 7 was inside. The attendant stopped with Jianshan before the entrance to the Tower of Radiance. He said, Esteemed Master Yang Yutian, I can only take you up to here. Jianshan nodded slightly. He glanced at the closed entrance and strode over. Esteemed Radiant Saint Master, please show me your keepsake. As soon as Jianshan approached the entrance, he was stopped by a guard. The guard was a middle-aged man who was a Heaven Saint Master. Jianshan said nothing. He He directly took out the medial jade the fifth elder had given him from his space ring. The guard took the medial jade from Jianshun and checked it. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with it, he handed it back to Jianshun and made an inviting gesture. He said, "Esteemed Radiant Saint Master, please." With that, he opened the entrance to the Tower of Radiance. Jianshun passed through the entrance and made his way up the narrow spiral staircase. He had already reached the top of the castle. After climbing around 20 meters, Jianshun finally arrived in front of a small door. His eyes narrowed as he saw an old man in azure robes sitting on the ground beside the door, guarding it. A saint ruler. Jianshun was secretly surprised. He had never thought that there would actually be a saint ruler guarding this place. "Do you have a keepsake of a corps member?" The old man closed his eyes and asked nonchalantly. Jianshun immediately took out the medial jade. "Go in. Remember, you can't take anything out of here. Don't try any tricks. This is a barrier personally cast down by the Holy Emperor. Everything in here is marked with a special mark. Once you take it out of the barrier, you'll be killed mercilessly by the power of the barrier." The old man's eyes remained closed, but his voice was stern and cold. "Thank you for the warning, Senior." Jianshun clasped his hands at the old man before striding forward. He directly pushed open the small wooden door and entered. A spacious hall entered his eyes. The layout of the hall was very simple. Aside from a bookshelf in the center, there were only a few tables and chairs placed in the surroundings in an orderly manner. Jianshun glanced around before fixing his gaze on the bookshelf in the center. He slowly made his way over. There weren't many books on the bookshelf. They were thin and thick, but there were no more than 100 books in total. Every single book was made from the hide of a high-class magical beast. The hide had already turned yellow, showing traces of time. No one knew how long they had been there. Are these the secret manuals that record the radiant arts? Jianshun murmured as he glanced around the books. He then casually took out a book and saw the words "Radiant Shield" written on the cover. Filled with curiosity, Jianshun slowly flipped through the pages. He gradually gained a better understanding of the radiant arte, the Radiant Shield. The Radiant Shield was a defensive technique. It seemed to have been specially made for Radiant Saint Masters. It was impossible for fighters to learn it apart from Radiant Saint Masters. Its ability condensed the Radiant Saint force in the surroundings into a shield to block the attacks of the enemy. The defensive power of the Radiant Shield depended on the strength of the caster. It seemed simple, but truly condensing Radiant Saint force into a shield that could block powerful attacks was not an easy task. Without any exaggeration, even a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master would never be able to condense Radiant Saint force into a shield to block powerful attacks unless they grasped the trick. This was because Radiant Saint force was different from the other elements of Saint force. Radiant Saint force was filled with gentleness. It was a wondrous energy that possessed great healing abilities. As a result, Radiant Saint Masters were weak, making them publicly known as a group of people on the Tianyuan continent who posed no threat at all. Chapter 738. Jianshun carefully read through the contents of the book before closing his eyes in thought. He silently went through the method of condensing a radiant shield in his head before suddenly opening his eyes. His gaze suddenly became sharp. Radiant shield. Jianshun enunciated every single word as he slowly raised his right hand. Dense Radiant Saint force rapidly gathered in his hand, condensing into a meter-wide shield in just a few seconds. The entire shield was illusory. It seemed like a ball of mist. Jianshun extended his right hand and actually passed through the shield without any obstruction. Disappointment filled Jianshun's eyes. The Radiant Shield was an extremely tough shield that could block powerful attacks. Although the shield he had condensed had the form, it did not have the ability to do so. It was just a decoration. It could not even block a breeze, let alone powerful attacks. Looks like grasping the Radiant Arts isn't an easy matter. Converting the gentle Radiant Saint force into the tough Yang force is just far too difficult. And according to the records, the true Radiant Shield is a tangible existence, tougher than steel. The Radiant Shield I condensed is only illusory. It's still far from being tangible, Jian-Chen murmured to himself. Radiant Saint Force was different from the other elements. If it were any other element, Jian-Chen could easily condense it into a shield to block powerful attacks. However, using Radiant Saint Force to the same level as the other elements was not a simple matter. The gentle nature and healing abilities of Radiant Saint Force naturally limited its growth. As a result, Radiant Saint Masters were publicly acknowledged as a group of people who posed no threat at all on the Tianyuan continent. They were as weak as ordinary people who could not cultivate Saint Force. Although he had failed the first time, Jian-Chen did not become dejected at all. He carefully studied the description of converting Radiant Saint Force in the records again. He understood that converting Radiant Saint Force was an extremely crucial step if he wanted to learn the Radiant Arts. Jian-Chen completely forgot about the time as he remained in the Tower of Radiance. All of his attention was focused on the book. The white tiger did not disturb Jian-Chen either. It laid on Jian-Chen's shoulder quietly and constantly shook its head as it looked around curiously. Half a day later, Jian-Chen slowly put down the book in his hand. He raised his right hand again, and the Radiant Saint Force in the surroundings rapidly condensing into a meter-wide shield in the end. Jian-Chen stared at the shield in his hand with interest before his eyes darkened. He sighed gently and said, "It still doesn't work. The shield is still illusionary. It looks like I haven't completely grasped the ability to convert Radiant Saint Force." Jian-Chen dispersed the shield. He did not continue reading the book. Instead, he lowered his head and sank into his thoughts. He had already memorized the contents of the records in half a day. He could even recite them backwards, so there was no point in continuing. He only needed to grasp the method to convert Radiant Saint Force before he could continue with the rest of the lesson. "Young man, you must be new." Suddenly, an old voice rang out, interrupting Jian-Chen's thoughts. Jian-Chen looked in the direction of the voice and saw an old man in linen clothes wiping the tables, chairs, and walls nearby with a clean piece of paper. He did not make any sound at all. Jian-Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed. He stared at the old man with his back to him, and a sliver of shock flashed through his eyes. Although he had been in deep thought earlier, he still maintained his vigilance toward his surroundings in this unfamiliar environment. He had actually failed to sense when the old man had appeared. If the old man had not taken the initiative to speak, Jian-Chen probably would not have known that there was an extra person here. "Young man, you're very impressive. Old man has been here for so many years and has seen quite a few Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, but basically all of them are over 100 years old. You're the only one who has become a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master in your 20s. The old man spoke very slowly. His aged voice actually carried a sense of powerlessness, as if he was lacking in energy. Jian-Chen stood up and clasped his hands at the old man. He said, "Yang Yutian greets Senior." Jian-Chen was unable to see through the old man's strength. In Jian-Chen's eyes, the old man was just an extremely ordinary old man. There was nothing special about him. However, Jian-Chen was not naive enough to believe that. Instead, he felt that the old man was even more unfathomable. This old man is at the 7th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler at the very least, or even above that. Jian-Chen guessed inside. If a 7th heavenly layer Saint Ruler purposefully hid their strength, it was completely possible for them to reach the same level as the old man. "Yang Yuqian, it's not difficult to learn Radiant Arts. What's difficult is converting Radiant Saint Force. The Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters who have just arrived have basically spent several years, or even over a decade, to completely grasp the ability to convert Radiant Saint Force. It's not something that can be done in a short amount of time. Take the book to the secret room above and comprehend it, just in case you destroy the things here," the old man said weakly. He seemed like a dying old man. From the beginning to the end, he did what he was doing. He did not even glance at Jian-Chen. Jian-Chen clasped his hands at the old man and placed the book back on the shelf. Afterward, he made his way up. He planned on going to the secret room the old man had mentioned to continue comprehending. There were quite a few secret rooms above. Every single one of them had a small wooden door, and behind the door was a small room enveloped by a barrier. Not only did the barrier possess great defensive power, but it also had the ability to block out all sounds, allowing people to cultivate without being disturbed. Jianshun glanced around and discovered that many of the secret rooms had a psychic jade hanging on the door. It was a sign that the secret room had already been occupied. Jianshun found a spacious secret room and took out the psychic jade from his space ring. He hung it on the door before directly entering the secret room to continue comprehending the ability to convert Radiant Saint Force. In the blink of an eye, Jianshun had already spent half a month in the Tower of Radiance. During that time, Jianshun did not take a single step out of the secret room. He devoted himself to cultivating the radiant arts. Jianshun constantly fed the white tiger heavenly resources during that time as well, allowing its strength to rapidly increase. Jianshun sat on the cold ground calmly in the secret room. His hands were placed on his knees, and a shield that shone with gentle light hovered before him. The shield had completely materialized, making it seem like a pure white rock. Jianshun waved his hand slightly, and the shield immediately flew towards him slowly, hovering beside Jianshun. Jianshun knocked the shield gently, and it immediately produced a heavy thud. Jianshun could not help but smile. After half a month of hard work, he had finally grasped the ability to convert Radiant Saint Force. He could condense Radiant Saint Force into something tangible now. This Radiant Shield can probably block the attacks of Great Saint Masters, but it'll definitely be destroyed by Earth Saint Masters. However, with my current abilities, I can definitely increase the defenses of the shield by a few more levels. It should be able to block the attacks of Heaven Saint Masters, Jianshun murmured to himself. A sliver of joy appeared in his eyes. Now that he had grasped the Radiant Shield that could block the attacks of Heaven Saint Masters, he no longer had to fear Heaven Saint Masters in the City of God. Although Heaven tier battle skills would not be able to harm his chaotic body at all, Jianshun would never expose his abilities as a fighter in the City of God. If his identity was exposed, all his previous efforts would be for naught. At the same time, he would face trouble from the Radiant Saint Master Union because he already knew some secrets that he should not know. I've basically grasped the Radiant Shield. I wonder if there are any more powerful defensive abilities than the Radiant Shield. Jianshun walked out of the room he had stayed in for half a month and returned to the bookshelf where the Radiant Arts were stored. He began to read through them one by one. The old man that Jianshun had discovered half a month ago was nowhere to be found. Although there were several dozen books on the bookshelf, most of them recorded things that Jianshun was not interested in. Only a few of them were cultivation methods for Radiant Arts. Radiant Sword. Jianshun held a thick book in his hand. After flipping through it, he discovered that it was an offensive technique. Its ability was to condense Radiant Saint Force into a huge sword that possessed great offensive power. It could be used to control the attack with one's mind. Jianshun memorized the location of the book before placing it back on the bookshelf. He continued to read through the other books. Sky filled with rain. Convert Radiant Saint Force into an extremely tough force. Condense it into the shape of raindrops and use your mind to control a group of people. Radiant Armor. Convert Radiant Saint Force into a combination of toughness and gentleness. Condense it into a suit of armor on the surface of the body to protect the wearer. Radiant Technique. Condense a humanoid figure that is exactly the same as the wearer wherever the Radiant Saint Force reaches. The figure does not fear any attacks. Void Manipulation. Condense Radiant Saint Force beneath the feet to allow the wearer to fly. Chapter 739. This time, Jianshun did not immediately enter seclusion to comprehend the Radiant Light technique like last time. Instead, he memorized the contents of every single book until he had memorized them completely. Without a doubt, Jianshun had benefited greatly from his trip to the Tower of Radiance this time. He had unexpectedly obtained wondrous Radiant Arts, which greatly increased his abilities as a Radiant Saint Master. Not only did he possess great healing abilities, but even his attacks had become much stronger as well. Although he possessed the chaotic body, so the so-called Radiant Arts were useless in his eyes, they could be used to support him under certain special circumstances. Jianshun spent an entire day memorizing all the Radiant Arts that he could read. Afterwards, His gaze suddenly landed on the top of the bookshelf. There were 3 thick books there, but every single book was enveloped by a layer of dense, radiant saint force, forming a seal that prevented others from reading them. Jinshin knew that the 3 thick books were definitely the most precious places. He extended his hands in an attempt to take them, but to his surprise, the radiant saint force around the books actually stopped his hand from approaching them. He was unable to touch the 3 books at all. Jinshin's eyes narrowed. After a moment of thought, a ball of dense, radiant saint force suddenly appeared in his hand. He then approached the 3 books once again. However, the result was the same as last time. His hand was stopped once again, unable to approach the books sealed by radiant saint force. Sir, these 3 books are not things that Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters like us can see because the radiant arts recorded in them can only be learned by Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters. At the same time, these 3 books are very different from ordinary books because they cannot be opened at all. The only way to read the contents is to send your mind into them, Jinshin explained. Suddenly, a voice came from not far away. A middle-aged man wearing a white robe with a blue badge on his chest walked down from the building where he was in seclusion. Thank you for the information. Jinshin sized up the middle-aged man, then cupped his fist slightly. Following the middle-aged man's method, he extended his divine sense and approached the 3 books. When the senses of Jinshin's soul approached the seal from Radiant Saint Force, it encountered an extremely tenacious resistance, preventing the senses of Jinshin's soul from entering. At the same time, the 3 books suddenly began to shine with dazzling white light. This was a sign that the seal had been touched. The middle-aged man shook his head with a bitter smile when he saw this. He said, "Sir, it's best if you don't waste your efforts." It said that the seals on the 3 radiant arts were personally cast down by the past presidents of the Union. Unless you're a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master, it's impossible to break through the seals and read the information in the books. In the past, there were many Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters who were unwilling to give up and tried, but without any exception, none of them managed to break through the seals. Jinshin ignored the middle-aged man's words. He expanded the senses of his soul as hard as he could, condensing them into needles as he tried his best to break through the seal on the first book. The Radiant Saint Force seal on the first book shook violently. This lasted for a few seconds before Jinshin finally broke through the seal. Jinshin's senses successfully entered the book as well. Immediately, a large amount of information surged into Jinshin's head, causing Jinshin to feel a slight swelling pain. What? You actually broke through the seal? The middle-aged man's eyes widened as he stared fixedly at Jinshin. Disbelief filled his face. Over the countless years, the seals on the 3 books could not be removed unless one was a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master. Yet now he had actually witnessed a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master break through the seal, which filled him with disbelief. However, a gleam of light flashed through the middle-aged man's eyes. He thought, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to peek at the mysteries of the Radiant Arts that only Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters can learn. The middle-aged man did not hesitate at all. His consciousness immediately expanded from his forehead, extending towards the book that Jinshin had removed with lightning-like speed. However, as soon as the middle-aged man's consciousness approached the book, the seal that Jinshin had removed immediately recovered. It shone with a dazzling white light, blocking the middle-aged man's consciousness. The middle-aged man did not give up. He tried his best to break through the seal, but he was unable to do what Jinshin had done in the end. He could only sigh helplessly and give up on peeking at the Class 7 Radiant Arts. Young man, may I ask what kind of Radiant Arts are recorded in this book? The middle-aged man looked at Jinshin. Undisguised fanaticism and envy filled his eyes. Jinshin said nothing. Instead, he closed his eyes and digested the large amount of information that had suddenly surged into his head. A short while later, Jinshin slowly opened his eyes. A gleam of light flashed through his eyes. The information that had just surged into his head did indeed record a Radiant Arte that only Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters could learn. The Radiant Arte was called the Sword of Adjudication. It was an extremely powerful offensive Radiant Arte. According to the records, a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master could kill regular Saint Rulers with the Sword of Adjudication. However, the Radiant Arte seemed rather useless in Jinshin's eyes because he could already kill 5th Heavenly Layer Saint Rulers with his current strength. Jinshin then looked at the other two books. Without any hesitation, he expanded the senses of his soul again and began to remove the seals on the other two books. The middle-aged man gulped with difficulty. He stared at Jinshin as he removed the seals. He planned on immediately extending his consciousness into the books to read the information inside as soon as the seals were removed. The Radiant Arte of a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master was enough to tempt any Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Once they obtained a Class 7 Radiant Arte, their strength would greatly increase. Even if they were unable to use the full power of the Class 7 Radiant Arte, it would definitely be more powerful than other Radiant Arts. For example, if a Heaven Tier battle skill fell into the hands of an Earth Saint Master, even if they were unable to use its full power, it would definitely be much more powerful than an Earth Tier battle skill. If a Class 6 Earth Saint Master used a Heaven Tier battle skill, they could easily heavily injure or even kill a Heaven Saint Master. A few seconds later, the seal on the second book was removed by Jinshin as well. The information immediately surged into Jinshin's head. At the same time, the middle-aged man who had been waiting by the side immediately extended his consciousness into the book as well. However, the result was the same as last time. As soon as his consciousness approached the book, the seal immediately recovered and blocked his consciousness. Sigh. The middle-aged man sighed. He was filled with pity. Then he looked at Jinshin with some jealousy. God's shelter, Jinshin murmured. This was an extremely powerful defensive technique recorded in the second book. It condensed the radiant saint force of the world and fused it with the user's body, allowing the body to become as tough as steel without any side effects. The Radiant God's Shelter was basically made for Radiant Saint Masters. It made up for their fragile bodies. However, the only flaw was that the Radiant God's Shelter could not be maintained for long and could only be used by Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters. The strength of the technique also depended on the user's abilities. I wonder if the Radiant God's Shelter can fuse with the chaotic body, Jinshin thought as his heart began to ripple. Afterward, Jinshin removed the seal on the third book as well. A large amount of information surged into Jinshin's head, causing Jinshin to close his eyes as he tried his best to digest it. The information this time was much more than the previous two times. Jinshin had to close his eyes for 10 whole minutes to digest all the information. The moment he opened his eyes, joy immediately flooded his face. His eyes were filled with excitement. The third book actually recorded a supreme technique, the God's Descent. The God's Descent was the most heaven-defying technique of the ancient times. It was a forbidden technique that only Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters could use because it was extremely powerful. If it was used by a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master, it could easily kill Saint Rulers. Even 9th Heavenly Layer Saint Rulers would not be able to survive. Even Holy Emperor experts could put up a fight against it. Jinshin had even learned from the records that a Class 8 Radiant Saint Master had used the God's Descent to kill 2 Holy Emperor experts consecutively. However, the price of using the Godfall technique was extremely high. Every time it was used, it would consume 100 years of life. The Class 8 Radiant Saint Master from ancient times had paid 1,000 years of life to kill the 2 Saint Emperors with the Godfall technique. Not only was the God's Descent the most powerful technique that a Radiant Saint Master could use, it was also a forbidden technique for all Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters. No one was willing to use it unless they had no other choice, because the price was just too great. However, that did not decrease Jinshin's sorrow over the God's Descent at all. He knew that once he grasped the technique, he would possess the strength to threaten 9th Heavenly Layer Saint Rulers once he reached Class 7. Even if he encountered the Holy Emperor, he would be able to hold his ground, even if he was not his opponent. Jinshin's heart began to beat heavily. At that moment, he began to look forward to becoming a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master, as soon as possible. The middle-aged man knew that Jianshan must have discovered an extremely impressive technique when he saw how delighted Jianshan was. He hesitated slightly, but he was unable to suppress his curiosity in the end. He smiled and said amiably, "Young man, from how delighted you are, you must have discovered some impressive technique. May I ask if you can tell me a little so that we can study the mysteries of the technique together and see if we can find a technique that can only be used by Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters with our current abilities?" Jianshan understood what the middle-aged man was thinking. He said, "Sir, if you want to comprehend these 3 techniques, it's best if you obtain them yourself. After all, the Radiant Saint Master Union has a rule that it's forbidden to pass on any techniques to others without their permission. I can't break this rule." With that, Jianshan turned around and left. He directly returned to the 2nd floor to continue his seclusion. He planned on comprehending all the techniques he knew in the next period of time, especially the God's Descent. Jianshan placed great importance on it. Chapter 740. Within the Tower of Radiance, Jianshan had already returned to his original room. He devoted himself to comprehending the radiant arts. After Jianshan entered seclusion, the middle-aged man who had watched as Jianshan comprehended the 3 divine arts was extremely unwilling to miss out on them. He stubbornly waited outside the room where Jianshan cultivated. In the blink of an eye, 3 months passed. Today, the wooden door to the room that had been closed for 3 months finally opened slowly. Jianshan walked out in white robes while a snow-white tiger rested on his shoulder. After 3 months of comprehension, Jianshan had basically grasped all the divine arts. He only had a rudimentary grasp of the 3 divine arts that could only be used by Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters. Jianshan had spent the most time on the 3 divine arts, but no matter how hard he tried, he was unable to use all of them. Even if he did use his full strength, they were nowhere near as powerful as recorded in the records. They were only equivalent to an attack from a Heaven Saint Master at best. Although Jianshan's talent was close to Class 7, he was still a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master after all. Being able to do what he did was already extremely impressive. If it were any other Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, it would have been impossible for them to do what Jianshan did. Jianshan pushed open the wooden door that had been closed for 3 months and discovered the middle-aged man sitting at the entrance with a single glance. The sound from the door alarmed the middle-aged man, who immediately opened his eyes. When he discovered Jianshan, he immediately beamed with joy. He hurriedly stood up and smiled. He greeted Jianshan in a fawning manner. "Brother, you've finally come out. How was your comprehension of the 3 radiant arts? You must have benefited greatly." Jianshan frowned slightly. He said emotionlessly, "Sir, do you need something for you to wait here?" It's fine. Little brother, I, Quan Yu Kai, am deeply convinced by the talent and strength that little brother has displayed. My admiration for little brother is like a torrential river. Therefore, I want to find an opportunity to interact with little brother. If little brother is not stingy, you can give some pointers to Quan Yu Kai. Quan Yu Kai will definitely be grateful, said the middle-aged man with a charming smile. Jianshan frowned once again. The middle-aged man's behavior made Jianshan doubt whether he was even a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. He did not have any pride as a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master at all. "Sir, I'm sorry. I have matters to attend to, so I don't have time to interact with you. Farewell." Jianshan clasped his fist at Quan Yu Kai before turning around and leaving. He did not look at Quan Yu Kai again. Sigh. Don't be in such a hurry to leave. I've waited for you for 3 whole months. I didn't even leave this place when I was eating or going to the toilet. Even if I haven't done anything, I've still worked hard. How can you treat me like this?" Quan Yotsai's behavior did not match his status at all. He immediately chased after Jianshan and chattered away. "Brother, you must be new. Otherwise, why haven't I seen you before? In order to prepare for my breakthrough to Class 7 in a year, I spent 20 years in the Tower of Radiance painstakingly practicing the Radiant Saint Master. As a result, I know nothing about what happened in the past 20 years. As a result, I'm guessing that you must have only broken through to Class 6 in the past 20 years. Am I right? Brother, may I ask how old you are? How should I address you? Which clan do you come from? Brother, the radiant arts are extensive and profound. It's the only method of attack for radiant Saint Masters. I, Quan Yu Kai, have lived for over 300 years. I became a Class 5 Radiant Saint Master in my 50s. Due to my decent talent, the Radiant Saint Master Union taught me the radiant arts beforehand. As a result, I've spent almost 300 years researching the radiant arts. Although I still haven't reached the peak, I've made quite a few achievements. If you need, I, Quan Yu Kai, can make an exception and pass on my knowledge and experience to you. Quan Yu Kai chattered away in Jinshin's ear patiently, directly ignoring Jinshin's coldness. He was so thick-skinned that Jinshin wondered many times whether he was a noble Class 6 Radiant Saint Master or not. Jinshin left the Tower of Radiance and ignored Quan Yotsai's harassment. He directly made his way down. Yang Yutian. Suddenly, a voice rang out. The fifth elder who had carried out the core member ceremony for Jinshin made his way over from afar. A burly, middle-aged man followed beside the fifth elder. An undetectable cold light flashed through Jinshin's eyes. However, his expression did not change at all. He clasped his hands at the fifth elder politely and said, Yang Yutian greets the fifth elder. Quan Yu Kai greets the fifth elder. Quan Yu Kai, who had followed Jinshin down from the Tower of Radiance, clasped his hands at the fifth elder as well. Then he glanced at Jinshin and sniggered. So you're called Yang Yutian. Even if you didn't tell me, I would have known your name. The fifth elder arrived before Jinshin and looked at Jinshin with a benevolent smile. He said, Yang Yutian, every single core member of our union can ask the union to send fighters to protect them. The president places special importance on you, which is why he sent Mr. Yangling to protect you. Mr. Yangling is a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master and has grasped a Heaven tier battle skill. His battle prowess is extremely great. With him protecting you, no one in the city of God will be able to harm you. The burly man behind the fifth elder clasped his hands at Jinshin and said in a low, muffled voice, Yangling greets Mr. Yang Yutian. Thank you for your concern, fifth elder and president, Jinshin said. The fifth elder chuckled. Yang Yutian, why are you still calling him president? You should be calling him master. Jinshin smiled. You're right, fifth elder. All right, Yang Yutian, I won't take up any more of your time. I just happen to have some matters to take care of, so I'll be taking my leave first. Oh right, the Radiant Saint Master Challenge will be held in a month's time. You must participate then and try to get into the top 10. Only then will you have the chance to reach the 7th class, the fifth elder said to Jinshin before leaving without waiting for Jinshin's reply. As soon as the fifth elder left, Quan Yu Kai said to Jinshin, Oi, Yang Yutian, the president is actually your master. Is that true? Quan Yotsai's eyes were filled with disbelief. Jinshin ignored Quan Yu Kai. He calmly stared at the fifth elder's back and pondered for a while before leaving. Yangling followed closely behind Jinshin. As soon as Jinshin walked out of the union, over a dozen people immediately surrounded him. A cold light flashed through Yangling's eyes as he stood behind Jinshin, but they soon returned to normal. He had already recognized these people and knew that they had not come to harm Jinshin. May I ask if you are Sir Yang Yutian? The people stood in front of Jinshin and asked him the same question. They were extremely polite. I am indeed Yang Yutian. May I ask who you are? Jinshin calmly asked. Esteemed Master Yang Yutian, I am from the Zhou family, one of the 8 great clans. On behalf of my master, I would like to invite Master Yang Yutian to my estate for a chat. Esteemed Master Yang Yutian, I am from the Marquis estate, one of the 8 great clans. On behalf of the Marquis, I would like to invite Master Yang Yutian to my estate for a chat. Esteemed Master Yang Yutian, I am from the Sai family, one of the 8 great clans. On behalf of my master, I would like to invite Master Yang Yutian to my Sai family for a chat. Esteemed Master Yang Yutian, I am from one of the 8 great clans. The people all stated their identities. 8 of them were from the 8 great clans of the City of God, while the rest were from second-rate clans. Without any exception, they all wanted to invite Jinshin to their clans. Seriously? All the renowned 8 great clans of the City of God have come. Brother Yang Yutian, So you're actually so popular. This is far too unfair. I, Quan Yu Kai, am also a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master like you. So why am I not so popular? Is it because I've spent 20 years in the Tower of Radiance, and the outside world has changed? Quan Yu Kai grumbled from beside Jianshan. He was unhappy. Jianshan frowned slightly and asked, "Since your masters want to see me so much, why haven't they come personally?" The people all hesitated, while the people from the 8 great clans frowned slightly. In their eyes, Yang Yutian was just too arrogant. Their 8 great clans could not be compared to second- or third-rate clans. A mere Class 6 Radiant Saint Master with some talent was not enough for their masters to come personally. Whatever. Since your masters want to see me so much, I'll go see them. Go back and tell your masters that I, Yang Yuqian, will be booking the most famous pleasure boat on the Fragrance River in 3 days. If they don't want to come, I, Yang Yuqian, won't force them, Jianshan said. He did not take the 8 great clans seriously at all. Master Yang Yuqian, that's not very good. The Marquis is the person in charge of the Marquis estate. His status is extremely great. He can't be compared to those second- or third-rate clans, a person said with displeasure. Then the Marquis can choose not to come. It's not like I, Yang Yuqian, will force you. Jianshan coldly replied. He did not give them any face at all. Now that he had grasped the radiant arts, he feared no one unless a saint ruler personally came. The expression of the person from the Marquis estate immediately became ugly. He said with a heavy voice, I will pass on Master Yang Yutian's words to the Marquis. Farewell. After the people from the Marquis estate left, the people from the other 7 clans all bid farewell to Jianshan and left as well. After personally witnessing Jianshan's attitude towards the Marquis estate, they completely gave up on any thoughts of disagreeing with him. They would rather bring back the exact same words than be rebuffed here. If they were to leave dejectedly in the end, it would not be worth it. Chapter 741. After the 8 clans left, Quan Yu Kai said to Jianshan in admiration, Brother Yang Yuqian, you really are impressive. You actually didn't show any respect to the 8 clans. You're the most impressive Class 6 Radiant Saint Master that I've ever met. I truly admire you. Yang Ling stood behind Jianshan emotionlessly, loyally carrying out his mission of protecting Jianshan. He felt that it was only natural that Jianshan did not show any respect to the 8 clans, as if that was how it should be. Ignoring Jianshan's talent, just the fact that he was the disciple of the president meant that he was no weaker than a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master. The 8 clans really did not have the right to be arrogant before him. Jianshan ignored Quan Yu Kai. He found a luxurious carriage on the streets and directly boarded it after discussing the price with the coachman. Yang Ling followed Jianshan into the carriage as well, sitting quietly beside Jianshan with his eyes closed. He did not say anything. Brother Yang Yuqian, wait for me. Quan Yu Kai shamelessly entered the carriage as well, sitting beside Jianshan with a giggle. Jianshan frowned slightly. He stared at Quan Yu Kai with displeasure and asked, Why are you following me? Quan Yu Kai did not blush at all. He giggled, Brother Yang Yuqian, we can interact with each other whenever we want. This is a rare opportunity for both of us. The competition for Radiant Saint Masters will begin in a month's time. At that time, we'll definitely be able to enter the top 10 and easily obtain the chance to reach Class 7. Quan Yu Kai, I know you're after the 3 divine techniques, but you can give up. You should know the rules of the Union. You can only obtain the 3 divine techniques with your own strength. I won't tell you. Jianshan slowly closed his eyes and no longer said anything. He knew that Quan Yu Kai was following him for the 3 radiant arts that only Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters could learn. Quan Yu Kai giggled and said, Brother Yang Yuqian, you see, the date of the competition is getting closer and closer. Moreover, the Union only states that no divine techniques can be taught to outsiders, but they don't state that core members can't interact with each other. You see, the date of the competition is getting closer and closer. If the 2 of us can grasp the 3 divine techniques, our chances of entering the top 10 will greatly increase. Don't you think so? Quan Yu Kai rubbed his hands together as he stared at Jianshan with a burning gaze. Jianshan sat in the bumpy carriage with his eyes closed, as if he did not hear Quan Yotsai's words. The people of the 8 great clans returned to their respective clans very quickly and passed on Jianshan's words to their masters. At this moment, in the Marquis estate, the white-robed Marquis slowly stood up from his throne. A cold smile appeared on his face as he said, "This young Yuqian actually wants us to meet on a pleasure boat on the Fragrance River." What arrogance! Whatever, I'll go to the Fragrance River in 3 days and see if this young Yutian's abilities are as exaggerated as the rumors say. In the Chung family of the 8 great clans, a refined middle-aged man sat cross-legged on a bed in a luxurious room. He smiled and said, "This young Yutian is quite interesting. Originally, I wanted to invite him to the most famous pleasure boat on the Fragrance River for a chat, but now he's inviting me. I wonder what this young Yutian's personality is like. I hope he doesn't disappoint me." In another mansion, an old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion sat cross-legged on a cattail hassock. He smiled and said, "This young Yutian actually wants us, the 8 great clans, to have a chat at the Fragrance River. Although he is a little arrogant, he does have the qualifications to do so. Fine, this old man will go there in 3 days and see how the 3rd disciple of the president is like." A white-robed, middle-aged man with an extremely ordinary appearance walked through the sea of flowers in a garden filled with the fragrance of flowers. He said with a deep voice, "We'll meet on the pleasure boat on the Fragrance River in 3 days. Yang Yuqian, you do indeed have the right to invite the people of our 8 great clans. However, I wonder how far you'll be able to go with your radiant arts after 3 months of comprehension with your talent that is close to Class 7. At the same time, the other clans of the 8 great clans in the City of God all had different opinions. The carriage sped along the wide streets before stopping outside a branch of the Union. Jianshan leapt off the carriage and directly made his way into the branch. Not only did the branch of the Union provide certification for Radiant Saint Masters below Class 4, but it also provided a safe residence for all Radiant Saint Masters. Lin Bai's temporary resting place was within the branch. Jianshan walked into the branch in his luxurious white robes with a blue badge on his chest. The burly Yang Ling followed closely behind Jianshan. He constantly scanned the surroundings with a sharp gaze to ensure Jianshan's safety. Quan Yukai did not fall behind either. He shamelessly followed along, walking side by side with Jianshan. The appearance of 2 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters with blue badges on their chests immediately caused an uproar. All the Radiant Saint Masters and fighters along the way cast envious and respectful gazes at Jianshan, but no one dared to go up and speak to them. An old man with an azure badge on his chest quickly ran over from afar. He first bowed to Jianshan and Quan Yukai politely before saying, "Esteemed Radiant Saint Masters, I am the vice chairman of this union. May I ask how I can be of service to you?" "There's no need to be so polite. May I ask if Lin Bai is here?" Jianshan smiled and spoke in an easygoing manner. Yes. Lin Bai has been living here for the past few years. Sirs, please come to the living room and have a seat. I will send someone to inform Lin Bai," said the vice president. At the same time, he gestured for them to enter. "There's no need. We'll just wait here." Jianshan crossed his arms and stood there. Very soon, the white-robed Lin Bai quickly walked out of the union. Behind him were 2 personal guards. "Ha, little brother Yang Yutian, I knew it would be you who would come looking for me. Out of all the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters I know, aside from my master, there's only you, little brother Yang Yutian." Lin Bai laughed heartily from afar. Jianshan smiled. He had a rather good impression of Lin Bai. Ignoring how honest and reliable Lin Bai was, just the fact that he had resolved a small problem with the Lei family 3 months ago made Jianshan feel grateful. "Uncle Lin Bai, it's been 3 months since we last met. How have you been?" Jianshan smiled. "Oh my, little brother Yang Yutian, just call me Lin Bai." "There's no need to call me uncle," Lin Bai said with a bitter smile. His gaze then landed on Quan Yukai beside Jianshan. He quickly glanced at the blue badge on Quan Yotsai's chest and immediately showed some respect. He said, "Little brother Yang Yutian, may I ask who this esteemed Class 6 Radiant Saint Master is?" Quan Yukai glanced at the badge on Lin Bai's chest and immediately showed a sliver of arrogance. He said, "I am Quan Yu Kai, a friend of little brother Yang Yutian. You called Lin Bai, right? All right. Follow us in the future, and I guarantee that you'll successfully reach the 6th class. If you come across any problems with your radiant arts in the future, feel free to come find me." Quan Yu Kai boasted as if he had reached an extremely high level of mastery in the radiant arts. Lin Bai chuckled and clasped his hands at Quan Yu Kai. "When the time comes, I'll have to trouble Master Quan Yu Kai for your guidance." Quan Yu Kai crossed his arms and raised his head slightly. He stared at the ceiling and acted like he was the greatest in the world. He said, "It's nothing. If you come across any problems, feel free to come find me. For the sake of Yang Yutian, I, Quan Yu Kai, will make an exception and help you for free. There's nothing that I, Quan Yu Kai, can't solve when it comes to radiant arts." As soon as he finished speaking, Quan Yu Kai seemed to have thought of something. His aura immediately disappeared, and he carefully glanced at Jinshin beside him. He added, "Of course, this is excluding the 3 radiant arts that can only be learned by Class 7, Radiant Saint Masters. Uncle Lin Bai, don't listen to his nonsense. He's just spouting nonsense. Don't believe him." Jinshin could not stand it any longer and pulled Lin Bai out of the branch. "Sai, Yang Yutian, how can you look down on me like that? I, Quan Yu Kai, am renowned. I'm not as bad as you make me out to be," Quan Yu Kai angrily complained to Jinshin. The vice chairman stared blankly at the 3 of them as they left. Only when they disappeared from his sight did he return to his senses. He murmured, "Quan Yu Kai. That person is actually Quan Yu Kai. It said that 100 years ago, Quan Yu Kai fought against a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master ranked 7th on the 10 great rankings. It ended in a draw in the end. Is that Quan Yu Kai that person?" Afterwards, Jinshin strolled through the various stores in the City of God under Lin Bai's lead. He hoped to find materials for the Azulite swords, but the results were still disappointing to Jinshin. After 3 days, he still did not find anything. 3 days later, Jinshin bid farewell to Lin Bai and brought Yangling and Quan Yu Kai to the teleportation station of the City of God. After spending 2 Class 4 monster cores, they left through a space gate. As one of the 7 capital cities, the City of God occupied an extremely large area. It would take a day and a night to get to the center of the city from any of the 4 entrances. As a result, there were many space gates left behind by the Holy Emperor in the past. The space gates in the City of God were slightly different from the ones in the Qin Empire. The space gates in the City of God were open all year round and had existed for countless years now. They used a mysterious formation to absorb the energy of the world to power the space gates, so there was no need for Class 5 monster cores to open them. As a result, using the space gates in the City of God only required a single Class 4 monster core. Jinshin's group of 3 left the City of God through the space gate and called for a carriage, heading for the Drifting Fragrance River 20 kilometers away. The Drifting Fragrance River was a scenic spot that had existed for countless years. It was said that when the City of God was first established in the ancient times, a holy emperor had opened up a chasm with great abilities. The chasm was several hundred meters wide and bottomless, surrounding the entire City of God. Afterwards, rainwater gathered and gradually filled up the chasm. In the end, the chasm basically became a moat for the City of God. At the same time, a faint fragrance wafted out of the water. As a result, the chasm opened up by a holy emperor in the ancient times gradually became a beautiful scenery outside the City of God. It was named the Drifting Fragrance River. Chapter 742. The sun was setting in the sky, leaving behind a dusk. It was already evening now. Outside the City of God, one of the 7 capital cities of the Tianyuan continent, the Fragrance River welcomed another lively night. Yellow and green lanterns had been placed on both sides of the riverbank that was several hundred meters wide. A bustling crowd strolled along the river, and there was no lack of couples chatting by the riverbank. On the surface of the river, pleasure boats of different sizes with colorful lanterns hung on them were slowly moving. Sweet singing and elegant zither music came from the pleasure boats, drifting across the entire river. Vaguely, one could hear the loud voices of some high officials and nobles sitting on the pleasure boats, talking loudly. On the largest port of the Fragrance River, a huge pleasure boat that was 300 meters long silently docked there like a primordial beast. The boat was covered in multicolored lanterns, dyeing the boat in all sorts of colors. It was extremely enchanting. Over 100 sailors in formal attire and a few attendants stood on both sides of the port sternly, as if they were waiting for something. It was extremely rare to see such a huge pleasure boat docked here and in such a grand formation. All the passers-by could not help but stop and look. They all pointed at the boat and discussed. Isn't that the largest and most luxurious pleasure boat on the Fragrance River? The Mayan boat? Why is it docked here? And it's in such a grand formation. This is extremely rare. Could it be that Shui Mayan has been booked by someone tonight? Otherwise, why would he park here instead of earning money at such a good time? Shui Mayan is the most luxurious pleasure boat in the Fragrance River. At the same time, it is also the most expensive pleasure boat. I heard that a meal on it is equivalent to several months of ordinary people's expenses. I really don't know which wealthy big shot booked the entire Shui Mayan. Just as the crowd was pointing at the pleasure boat and discussing spiritedly, a luxurious carriage galloped over from afar and slowly stopped near the harbor. Soon after, 3 figures jumped down from the carriage. Among the 3 people, 2 of them were wearing white robes. They had slender figures and wore an exquisite badge flashing with blue light on their chests. The last person was a burly man wearing a black suit with a valiant body. The 3 of them were Jianshun, Quan Yu Kai, and the 6-cycle Heaven Saint Master who had been sent by the Radiant Saint Master Union to protect Jianshun, Yangling. With the appearance of Jianshun and Quan Yu Kai, the people in the surroundings immediately broke into an intense discussion. At that moment, everyone's gazes shifted from the boat to Jianshun and Quan Yu Kai. Their gazes were filled with deep respect and envy, as well as some extreme emotions. Jianshun, Heiyu, and Heiyu ignored the discussion in the surroundings. They directly made their way to the huge boat that was parked up ahead. Immediately, a gorgeously dressed middle-aged woman leisurely made her way over to Jianshun, Heiyu, and Heiyu. She then politely bowed to the 3 of them and said, "Esteemed Radiant Saint Master, the most famous boat on the Fragrance River, the Ink Cloud, has already been prepared for you. Please board." With that, the middle-aged woman moved to the side and gestured for Jianshun, Heiyu, and Heiyu to board. Jianshun's gaze paused on the huge boat for a while before he calmly said, "Other than those who are essential, leave everyone else here. Please allow the people of the 8 great clans of the City of God and a few famous clans to board." A sliver of surprise immediately flashed through the middle-aged woman's eyes when she heard about the 8 great clans of the City of God. She then became even more respectful and said, "Yes, esteemed Radiant Saint Master. I will definitely follow your orders." Jianshun, Heiyu, and Heiyu made their way to the boat. When they passed by the formation of over 100 people, all of them bowed towards Jianshun in unison and said, "Please board the boat, Radiant Saint Master." Jianshun paused slightly and frowned slightly. He was clearly not used to this kind of treatment, as someone who always kept a low profile and did not like to put on airs. However, he returned to normal and boarded the boat. The most famous and luxurious boat on the Fragrance River, the Ink Cloud, had been booked by Jianshun 2 days ago. It had cost him quite a lot of money, but to someone as wealthy as Jianshun, this amount of money was nothing. After Jianshun, Heiyu, and Heiyu disappeared from the boat, the shore began to discuss once more. However, the discussion did not last for very long before the sound of hurried hooves rang out from afar. Over 20 men riding Class 5 magical beasts rushed over from the direction of the City of God, escorting a luxurious carriage. They stopped outside the harbor very soon, and a banner with the word on it fluttered in the wind. Isn't that the carriage of one of the 8 great clans of the City of God, the Chung family? The accompanying guards are all riding 5th-tier magic beasts. They must be the elite troops of the Chung clan. Since the person in the carriage is being protected by the elite troops of the Chung clan, his status must be very high. Immediately, many people began to talk all at once. Their eyes were filled with great interest. At this moment, the door of the carriage opened, and a middle-aged man in a white robe with a blue badge on his chest jumped down from the carriage. After that, he entered the pleasure boat with an old man following behind him. Not long after the middle-aged man squeezed into the pleasure boat, there was the sound of hurried horse hooves. Several dozen men in golden armor were escorting a luxurious carriage from a distance. In the end, it also stopped at the port. An old man in a brocade robe came down from the carriage. Under the protection of two middle-aged men, he strode towards the pleasure boat. That's the carriage of one of the 8 great clans of the City of God, the Zhou family. I didn't think the Zhou family would come as well. Someone recognized a group of people and immediately called out in a low voice. Suddenly, a wave of heat rolled over from afar. It was as if the air was burning, causing the temperature of the fragrance river to rise. It's the Fire God clan. It's the Fire God clan, the leader of the 8 great clans of the City of God. Even the Fire God clan has come, someone cried out from the crowd. At the end of the darkness, there seemed to be a burning red cloud. More than 20 people riding Class 5 magical beasts were escorting a carriage as they slowly approached from the distance. These people were wearing the same fiery red robes, and from their bodies, a strong fire attribute aura was emitted. As they approached, the faint water vapor from the fragrance river evaporated into a thick fog. The Fire God clan is extremely powerful. Not only is it the leader of the 8 great clans, but I've also heard that the Fire God clan's strength has almost reached the level of the ruler of the City of God, the Tsar family. I've heard that the Fire God clan has a long history. It's an ancient clan that has been passed down since ancient times. It's said that in ancient times, the Fire God clan was one of the most powerful organizations on the Tianyuan continent. It's just that after so many years, the Fire God clan has gradually declined, which is why it has fallen to its current state. The Fire God clan has always kept a very low profile in the City of God. I never thought that they would come to the Fragrance River with such great fanfare. I wonder if something big will happen tonight. Look, they're here again. It's the Sire clan. I never thought that another one of the 8 great clans would come. Heavens, it's the Medsun clan. What's going on tonight? Half of the 8 great clans have come. Isn't that the Qilong clan? Even the Qilong clan of the 8 great clans has come. Look over there. Isn't that the carriage of the Marquis estate? I never thought that even the people of the Marquis estate would come. And there. Isn't that the Dekang clan? Heavens, all the 8 great clans of the City of God have actually come. And looking at the guards, their statuses definitely aren't low. Just what kind of big day is it tonight? With the gathering of the 8 great clans, it immediately set off quite a big storm in the Fragrance River. Very soon, the news of the 8 great clans gathering at the Fragrance River spread like wildfire, causing the small boats in the river to involuntarily move to the side. Even the zither music and the sweet singing that reverberated on the river became much quieter. As the people of the 8 great clans all boarded the inky cloud that had been docked at the port for quite some time, finally left. It broke through the surface of the water and slowly made its way to the center of the lake. A large, round table had been placed on the deck of the inky cloud. Various delicacies had already been placed on it. Jinshan exchanged some pleasantries with the people of the 8 great clans before taking a seat. I've long heard that Brother Yang Yutian's talent is extraordinary, reaching Class 6 as a Radiant Saint Master at the age of 24. At the same time, your Radiant Arte's potential is close to that of a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master. In the beginning, I didn't really believe it, but now that I've seen you today, I've discovered that Brother Yang Yutian really is a dragon among men. Brother Yang Yutian must have benefited greatly from your 3 months of seclusion in the Tower of Radiance. The person who spoke was an old man. He was a member of the Qilong clan, one of the 8 great clans. His status was extremely great, and he was also a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Jinshin chuckled. You speak too highly of me, Senior. I have indeed benefited slightly from the Tower of Radiance. The trip to the Tower of Radiance has completely overturned my understanding of Radiant Saint Masters. What do you mean by slightly? It's basically a great harvest. Quan Yukai grumbled unhappily beside Jinshin. He did not agree with Jinshin at all. Even though Quan Yukai spoke softly, everyone still heard him. Everyone immediately looked at Quan Yukai, especially the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters. Their gazes towards Quan Yukai were filled with deep envy. I've long heard that Master Quan Yotsai's radiant arts have reached an extremely great level. 100 years ago, he even challenged a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, ranked 7th on the Radiant Saint Master rankings, but it ended in a draw. Master Quan Yotsai's strength must have increased by quite a lot after 100 years of arduous cultivation. The person who spoke was a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance. His voice was rather cold. He wore luxurious white robes with a blue badge on his chest. He was also a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Quan Yukai sniggered, of course. 100 years ago, my strength was on par with Limashine, but it's different now. Limashine definitely isn't my opponent right now, Quan Yukai. With that, Quan Yukai suddenly stared at the middle-aged man with ill intentions. He giggled, "Sarank, you also occupy a spot on the Radiant Saint Master rankings of the Radiant Saint Masters. You even rank 6th. Let's spar when we're free. What do you think?" An undetectable cold light flashed through the middle-aged man's eyes, but he did not show it on his face. He said calmly, "That's good. When we're free, I'll definitely spar with Sir Quan Yukai." Chapter 743. Jinshin looked at Quan Yukai with some surprise. He had never thought that Quan Yukai, whose skin was even thicker than a pig's, would actually possess the strength to challenge the top 10 experts. For the first time, Jinshin's gaze towards Quan Yukai changed slightly. He could not help but believe Quan Yotsai's words to Lin Bai, but that was it. Noticing Jinshin's gaze, Quan Yukai immediately revealed a smile that he believed to be enchanting. He giggled at Jinshin. "What do you think, Brother Yang Yuqian? Do you believe me now? I, Quan Yukai, am not as weak as you make me out to be. To be able to interact with my esteemed Class 6 Radiant Saint Master Quan Yukai, not only did you not lose out, you even benefited greatly. Don't you think you should seriously consider this matter?" Jinshin gently shook his head with a smile. He did not say anything as he thought. Quan Yukai really can't forget about the 3 Radiant Saint techniques. 3 months ago, Old Man heard that Brother Yang Yutian's talent was unprecedented, that you were a prodigy. Not only have you become a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master at the age of 24, your talent in the Radiant Saint techniques is close to that of a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master. You're getting closer and closer to breaking through to the Class 7 Radiant Saint Master. In a month's time, the elimination round will be held. I wonder how confident Brother Yang Yutian is in making the top 10. He was the person in charge of the Marquis estate. The Marquis. He was also a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. The people from the other clans all looked at Jinshin. Clearly, they were very interested in this matter. Quan Yukai immediately became surprised when he heard the Marquis words. He stared at Jinshin, clearly stunned by Jinshin's age and talent. However, he soon recovered and thought, no wonder Yang Yutian was able to break through the seals of the 3 Radiant Saint techniques. His talent in the Radiant Saint techniques is close to that of a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master. I wonder how his strength is right now and how much power he can unleash from the Radiant Saint techniques. Jinshin smiled. "You praise me too much, Marquis. I was just a little lucky, which is why I was able to become a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master so quickly. However, I'm not completely confident that I can make it to the top 10 in the elimination round next month, but I will definitely do my best. I, Chung Jian, believe that Brother Yang Yutian will definitely make it to the top 10. After all, Yang Yutian's talent in the Radiant Saint techniques is close to that of a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master, far surpassing us. I believe it won't be difficult for Brother Yang Yutian to make it to the top 10. Come, let me congratulate Brother Yang Yutian on behalf of the Chung family in advance." The middle-aged man raised his cup and toasted to Jinshin. After drinking, Chung Jian continued, "Brother Yang Yutian, I have a suggestion. Why don't we work together in the elimination round next month? That way, our chances of making it to the top 10 will increase drastically. What do you think, Brother Yang Yutian?" Brother Yang Yutian, Chung Jian's suggestion is not bad. Once we work together, our chances of making it to the top 10 will increase drastically. An old man immediately chimed in, as soon as Cheng Jian finished speaking. The Marquis smiled as well. In the past, our 8 great clans basically worked together when we participated in the competition. Yang Yuqian, why don't you come with us this time? That way, your chances of survival will be much greater. Then, the other clans all invited Jianshan to join their camp. They all saw Jianshan's talent and future achievements and knew that Jianshan's future achievements would definitely be above theirs. Jianshan didn't accept the 8 great clans' invitation. He hesitated for a moment as the president's words appeared in his mind. The Holy Emperor's kingdom isn't peaceful right now. Try not to get too close to the forces related to the 3 great clans. Thinking of this, Jianshan made a decision. He said apologetically to the others, I appreciate everyone's kindness, but I have other plans for the competition in a month. I won't be able to join you. Jianshan's words immediately made the expressions of the people at the table change slightly. Even the lively atmosphere froze in an instant. At this moment, the deck of the boat became strangely quiet. Even a pin drop could be heard clearly. After a while, the heavy atmosphere was finally broken. Brother Yang Yuqian, you have to think carefully. It's very dangerous to act alone. It's very difficult to make it to the end and make it to the top 10. The one who spoke was an old man from the Fire God clan. Jianshan refused without hesitation. Thank you for your kindness, but I've made up my mind. You don't have to say anything more. At the table, the faces of the people at the table became serious. A few of their eyes flashed with an undetectable coldness. At this moment, the white tiger that was napping on Jianshan's shoulder suddenly opened its eyes. A pair of bright eyes stared at the surface of the lake. Suddenly, the calm surface of the lake was broken. 30 black-clothed figures leapt out of the water. Their bodies flickered with the light of various elements as they charged toward the people at the table. Jianshan, Quan Yukai, and the people of the 8 great clans were not spared. They all became the targets of these people. Protect the Marquis. Protect the young master. On the boat, the guards of the 8 great clans immediately ran to the deck. They protected their masters as they retreated quickly. At the same time, they engaged in an intense battle with the black-clothed people who had charged up. Fuck, over 30 Heaven Saint Masters. What a big move. Quan Yukai cried out. A white cloud appeared below his feet and disappeared from the deck in the blink of an eye. He ran even faster than a rabbit. Over 20 of the 30 Heaven Saint Masters charged toward the 8 great clans. The remaining 10 or so all charged toward Jianshan. The Heaven Saint Masters of the 8 great clans protected their masters tightly. They blocked the attacks of the black-clothed people as they retreated from the deck. The people of the 8 great clans were all stern. They had brought quite a few Earth Saint Masters with them, but there were only a dozen or so Heaven Saint Masters. There was a huge difference in numbers between them and the black-clothed people. Not long after the 2 sides clashed, the people of the 8 great clans were slowly forced back into the cabin by the black-clothed people. A few of the guards had already been injured by the attacks of the black-clothed people, becoming covered in blood. Suddenly, a dazzling light illuminated the pitch-black night sky, dispersing quite a bit of the darkness. The Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters of the 8 great clans all took action as well. They used radiant arts one after another, attacking the black-clothed people. Right now, the people of the 8 great clans had already been forced to the entrance of the cabin by the black-clothed people. Only Jianshan remained calmly seated at the table. He seemed unfazed. Around him, over a dozen black-clothed people had already locked onto him, approaching him with lightning speed. A powerful ripple of energy appeared from behind. 3 black-clothed people approached Jianshan first. Their saint weapons flickered with a unique elemental light as they shot toward Jianshan's back with vast amounts of saint force. Jianshan sneered. He tilted his head back and downed all the wine in his cup. Without even glancing behind him, he softly chanted, "Radiant Shield." The radiant saint force in the surroundings gathered toward Jianshan at an unbelievable speed. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into a meter-wide, silver-white shield that blocked Jinshan's back. Although the Class 6, Radiant Saint Masters of the 8 Great Clans fought against the black-clothed people, their gazes would always inadvertently sweep past Jinshan. When they saw how Jinshan had condensed a radiant shield in such a short amount of time, they were all surprised. This was because Jinshan condensed the radiant shield so quickly that they could not match up to him, even if they used their full strength. Moreover, from how composed Jinshan was, it did not seem like he had used his full strength. This Yang Yutian really does have the potential to rival a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master when it comes to cultivating radiant arts. Just the speed at which he condenses the radiant shield is incomparable to ours. The Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters of the 8 Great Clans all thought to themselves. At this moment, the saint weapons of the 3 Heaven Saint Masters struck the radiant shield behind Jinshan with powerful ripples of energy. The radiant shield that was completely condensed from Radiant Saint Force was like an extremely tough piece of metal. It actually produced a loud clang, causing people's eardrums to ache slightly. Although the radiant shield had blocked the combined attack of the 3 Heaven Saint Masters, a spiderweb of cracks had appeared on it. Afterward, Jinshan gently tapped the radiant shield with his finger. The radiant shield shattered loudly, turning into countless tiny fragments that shot toward the 3 Heaven Saint Masters like lightning. The expressions of the 3 Heaven Saint Masters changed slightly. Surging Saint Force immediately surged out of their bodies, forming a barrier around them to block the incoming fragments. So the Radiant Shield can be used like this. I really learned something today. This little brother Yang Yutian really is impressive. He actually came up with an attack like this. Quan Yukai poked his head out of the cabin and stared at Jinshan, clicking his tongue in wonder. But this little brother Yang Yutian is facing over a dozen Heaven Saint Masters by himself. I wonder if he can hold on. Should we go and help him? Quan Yukai pondered for a while before replying, Forget it. Although I, Quan Yukai, have some strength, I'm powerless against so many Heaven Saint Masters. I can see that little brother Yang Yutian is filled with confidence. Let's just watch first. I can also see little brother Yang Yutian's strength while I'm at it. Radiant Sword. Jinshan did not stop at all. Just as the radiant shield shattered and shot toward the 3 Heaven Saint Masters, a huge sword over 2 meters long immediately condensed in front of him. With a wave of his hand, the huge sword turned into a streak of white light as it shot toward another black-clothed person. The black-clothed person did not take the radiant sword seriously at all. In his eyes, Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters may possess a certain amount of offensive power, but they were still not enough to threaten him, let alone a young man who was only in his 20s. However, when the radiant sword collided with the black-clothed person's saint weapon, a loud boom immediately rang out. The black-clothed person's face drastically changed, and he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. His body that was still in the air was sent flying by the radiant sword. Seeing how Jinshan had sent a Heaven Saint Master flying with a single radiant sword, the other black-clothed people who had surrounded Jinshan were all shocked. They all stared at Jinshan in disbelief. Impossible! When did the sacred light sword become so powerful? One of the black-clothed men couldn't help but cry out in alarm. Chapter 744. Be careful, everyone. This person's radiant arts are much more powerful than the other Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters. A 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master warned his companions before unleashing all his strength without holding back. He poured a tremendous amount of Saint Force into his Saint weapon, causing it to shine brightly. He then swung his sword at Jinshan. An extremely huge sword chi shot out from the man's Saint weapon. It shot toward Jinshan with a sliver of pressure from the surroundings. At the same time, 4 other men around Jinshan also swung their Saint weapons. They all shot out huge sword chi toward Jinshan. Every single sword chi locked onto Jinshan with a sliver of pressure from the surroundings. You dare to use a mere Earth-tier battle skill to embarrass yourself? A sliver of disdain appeared in Jinshan's eyes. He slowly spread his arms before his chest and softly said, Radiant Sword, Radiant Shield. The radiant saint force in the surroundings rapidly surged, gathering toward Jinshin's hands at an unbelievable speed. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into 4 radiant swords in front of Jinshin's left hand, while a 3-meter-wide shield formed in Jinshin's right hand once again. This scene caused the eyes of the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters from the 8 great clans to widen once again. How is this possible? Yang Yutian has actually condensed 4 radiant swords and a radiant shield in such a short amount of time. The Marquis was no longer able to maintain his composure. He stared at Jinshin in a daze, as if he had seen something unbelievable. Heavens, this little brother Yang Yutian is just too amazing. Not only can he condense 4 radiant swords and a radiant shield at the same time, but he's also several times faster than us. Heavens, just how did he do it? Quan Yotsai's mouth was agape. The shock in his heart had reached a point of no return. Yang Yutian really is powerful. Just this move alone is not something we can achieve. Even the person who ranks first on the ranking probably can't condense 5 radiant arts at the same time. The middle-aged man from the Chung family sighed inside. His gaze toward Jinshin was filled with shock and disbelief. Sirlang stared at Jinshin sternly. The light in his eyes flickered as he said with a deep voice, "Yang Yutian is much more powerful than I had imagined. It's a pity that he doesn't want to join our team. Once the competition starts, we'll become his enemies sooner or later." The old man from the Fire God clan said in a low voice as his eyes flickered. Hearing this, a cold light flashed through Sirlang's eyes. He no longer said anything. Swish, 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 swish. 4 ear-piercing sounds rang out as the 4 radiant swords turned into streaks of white light that collided with the sword chi shot out by the 4 Heaven Saint Masters using their Earth-tier battle skills. Boom! The 4 radiant swords collided with the 4 sword chi, immediately producing a violent explosion. This time, the radiant swords and sword chi actually collapsed in the air at the same time, turning into a violent shockwave that spread out in all directions. The largest pleasure boat on the Fragrance River, the Shui Mayun, was shaken by the shockwave. The river water was raised several meters high, and the pitch-black sky was illuminated by the white light of the shattered radiant swords. Jinshin immediately placed his right hand in front of his chest. The radiant shield seemed to be pulled by an invisible force. Following the position of Jinshin's right hand, it moved from Jinshin's side to Jinshin's front. Just like that, it floated in the air, blocking the devastating shockwave for Jinshin. At the same time, the remaining black-clothed people behind Jinshin flew over, wielding their saint weapons as they charged at Jinshin. A cold light flashed through Jinshin's eyes. The radiant shield remained in front of him as he muttered in a low voice, "Sky filled with rain." With that, the radiant saint force within a radius of 10 kilometers immediately became violent. The gentle radiant saint force that was originally as gentle as a lamb suddenly became violent, turning into ferocious tigers. In less than half a second, they all gathered around Jinshin, forming droplets of white light. Each droplet of light contained a sharp presence, as if they were sword chi that could pierce through metal. At the same time, the radiant swords in the hands of the 8 clans rapidly dimmed, vanishing very soon. Afterwards, a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master cried out in shock. How is this possible? All the Radiant Saint force within a radius of 10 kilometers has been drained. The expressions of the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters from the 8 clans became extremely interesting. They looked at each other as they became extremely shocked. They could not even speak. With all the Radiant Saint Masters within a radius of 10 kilometers, they could no longer use Radiant Arts. They had lived for so many years, but they had never encountered something like this. Brother Yang Yutian, you really are nothing special. You've actually drained all the Radiant Saint force within a radius of 10 kilometers, preventing the Radiant Saint Masters from using their Radiant Arts. My admiration for you is endless. Brother Yang Yutian, from today onwards, you'll be my idol. Quan Yukai stared at Jinshin with shining eyes as admiration flooded his face. Jinshin's face was cold, as if he did not notice how great of an impact his actions had on the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters of the 8 clans. A cold light flickered through his eyes as sharp killing intent leaked out. He called out, "Sky filled with rain, go." With a point of Jinshin's finger, the countless specks of light condensed from Radiant Saint Force immediately shot toward the black-clothed people behind him like moths to a flame. The black-clothed people had witnessed the great strength Jinshin had displayed earlier. They did not dare to be careless when faced with such an inconspicuous attack. Surging Saint Force immediately surged out from their bodies, forming a thick barrier around them to block the specks of light. At the same time, they swung their Saint weapons, constantly colliding with the specks of light. The specks of light were condensed from Radiant Saint Force. They seemed inconspicuous, but every single droplet was filled with powerful and sharp energy. When they collided with the Saint weapons of the black-clothed people, they immediately produced a series of metallic sounds. "Art!" A miserable shriek rang out from the black-clothed man's mouth. A few specks of light had broken through the layer of Saint Force on the surface of his body and pierced deep into his body. The intense pain caused him to uncontrollably cry out in pain. Although the other black-clothed men had managed to block the attacks of the specks of light, the situation was not optimistic. The specks of light were just too dense, almost as numerous as raindrops. Many of the specks of light had broken through the blockade of their Saint weapons and struck the defensive barriers formed by their Saint Force, causing them to violently tremble. "This damn thing is just too powerful. My Saint Force barrier can't last much longer. I can't hold on any longer. Retreat." A black-clothed person cursed as his barrier constantly trembled. He gave up on attacking Jinshin and rapidly retreated. "Is this bastard a Class 6 or 7 Radiant Saint Master? Why is he so powerful? We can't even approach him with over a dozen of us." The black-clothed people all cursed as they were forced back by Jinshin's radiant arts. They had no choice but to give up on attacking and retreat to protect themselves. "You want to retreat just like that? Not so easy." Jinshin sneered and called out, "Radiant swords." With that, 3 streaks of white light suddenly flickered in the distant horizon. They shot towards the boat with lightning speed, directly shooting towards one of the retreating black-clothed people. HHHH's actually condensing radiant swords from 10 kilometers away and then controlling them to fly over. The Class 6 Radiant Saint Master from the 8 clans immediately became tongue-tied when he saw this. This Yan Yutian sure is capable. He's actually able to condense radiant swords from 10 kilometers away and then control them to fly over. It's just unbelievable. The Class 6 Radiant Saint Master from the Chung family murmured in a rather daze. The complexion of Seer family's Seer Lanka became very unsightly, while the complexions of the other families were also uncertain. Behind you, a black-clothed person discovered the 3 radiant swords in the distance and immediately cried out to warn his companions. His eyes widened as he stared at the 3 radiant swords in disbelief. This was because the 3 radiant swords had actually flown over from 10 kilometers away. The other black-clothed people all noticed the radiant swords flying over from behind when they heard the cries of surprise. They were all shocked. The 3 radiant swords shot straight toward one of the black-clothed people. Every single radiant sword was equivalent to a full-powered attack from a Heaven Saint Master. The first radiant sword collided with the Saint weapon of one of the black-clothed people, causing him to rapidly retreat. A grunt rang out from his throat, indicating that he was heavily injured. Before the black-clothed person could return to his senses, the second radiant sword shot toward him. Although the black-clothed person successfully blocked it, he vomited a mouthful of blood. His hand that gripped the Saint weapon became numb from the powerful force, causing his right hand to droop powerlessly. Afterwards, the third radiant sword basically followed the second radiant sword as it shot toward the heavily injured black-clothed person. It directly pierced through his chest, and when half of the radiant sword entered his body, it suddenly exploded, blasting the black-clothed person to pieces. Even his soul failed to escape, directly wiping out his soul. A Heaven Saint Master had died to the hands of a Class 6, Radiant Saint Master, just like that. Moreover, he had been killed while being surrounded by so many people. Jianshun did not rejoice at all after killing a Heaven Saint Master. His face remained extremely cold as killing intent filled his eyes. He pointed his right hand at the sky and looked up at the pitch-black sky. He yelled out, "Sword of Judgment."